Oh, we're live. Right, right. Hang on. Right. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the... Thank you, Rex. Let me just start with that. Thank you very, very much. I do much appreciate your support, especially through everything. If you'd like to put that towards some, just let me know. You'll notice we don't have the spoiler thing up. I'm giving everyone a few seconds on the VOD, a few seconds for people who have this live, or forgot to have this live, or whatever. This is going to be an entire stream. I don't even have a schedule thing here. And that's because all we're talking about is Endgame today, okay? And by today, I mean during the Loreweek. We will be hitting PoE 2 later, but right now it's just Loreweek. And by Loreweek, I mean Endgame. My words might be all over the place, right? It's because I'm not doing so great. One of the things I wanted to tell you is a little story, if you'll accept my statements. Hang on one second. Some of you may know that I suffer from headaches. And if you don't happen to know what that terminology actually means, it means that I have recurring and regular issues with X, right? You know, if you suffer from palpitations, if you suffer from, head trauma or a bad leg or whatever, it's something that's a recurring issue, and I suffer from headaches. There's several reasons for that, but the most obvious one is actually blood sugar related. Believe it or not, it's one of the reasons why I need you guys to help me to remember to make sure I get lunch today, because I didn't yesterday. So I walked into the theater with a headache, and woo, as they say. That was fine. That was fine. I left the theater with a migraine. And that migraine actually got worse when I got home. And it was so bad that I woke up, I'm not sure how many times in the middle of the night. I actually threw up in the middle of the night, too. It's one of those kind of... And when I say migraine, I mean that word. I've said this before. I don't like to use that term because I've had really, really bad migraines. But, it was awful. I still have a bit of a headache as of this very minute in time. And so I'm still just kind of wooga wooga, and I didn't get a lot of sleep. So I just want to be nice and upfront about that one. I'm sure the sobbing didn't help, because I am unashamed to admit that, I cried more than once. Yeah. Anyways. So, that was a pretty bad one. But I was actually talking to Gary just a few minutes ago, and I kept switching up my words. And I was mentioning how I was so out of it, what I wanted to say is I want to splash water on my face. What I actually said is I want to splash face on my water. And he just started laughing. Let me just rip my face off and splash it into the sink there. So, you'll notice we still don't have the spoilers thing up. So we're still going to go ahead and just kind of wait for a minute here as we kind of lead into it. I do actually have some things I could talk about today, little minor topics. I could talk about how Todd Sweeney is a lying sack of crap. Look, I'm sorry. Whether you like Epic Games Store or not, or excuse me, it's Tim Sweeney. Sorry, Tim Sweeney is a lying sack of crap. Like, I love this. This is a direct quote. If Steam committed to a permanent 88% revenue share for all developers and publishers without major strings attached, Epic would hastily organize a retreat from exclusives and consider putting our own games on Steam. Then he immediately walked that back, like 3 different ways, and basically said, and they'd also have to do all this other stuff, which is impossible. Ugh. I'm sorry. I know that several people are in favor of the Epic Store, and that's fine. I've already given my opinion on the Epic Store. It's McDonald's to me. But that's some bull crap right there. I could also talk to you about Mortal Kombat 11 and the amount of money that you have to toss at Mortal Kombat 11 in order to actually buy all the skins and whatnot. Which, shrug, basically. Which, I mean, whatever, right? I could talk about what else happened this week. I feel like there's something. Hang on. Oh yeah, I could talk about how that idiot over at BioWare decided to say, "Hey, so I know the early access of Anthem has gone badly, but blah 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 blah." Thank you very very much, Kingsfold. As ever, I do much appreciate it, and I will put that towards lunch. I really will. I need you guys to help me this. I really do need you to help me remember, because I have a very bad habit of forgetting, especially when I'm streaming. And yeah, I actually know they're changing it. I don't know if you heard me. I don't know if you actually heard me stutter there in the middle of that Black File, but that's because I was checking the news thing that I've pulled up about it, and I noticed that there was actually a response from Ed Boon, which was interesting. But anyways, thank you very, very much, Uchiha Daisuke. I hope I'm saying that right. I've been trying to remember that one. And I will put that towards Cyberpunk in just a moment, because I don't have the thing up. I wasn't expecting donations today, of all days. Cyberpunk. Okay. Let me check thing. No, my connection's clean, so it's probably just Twitch at that point. So people, I guess that's true. We're getting to the end of the month. Big event this Friday. If you don't know what it is, that's okay. I don't blame you. Why would you? I was going to mention something else. Where's my list? I actually do have some real topics, like, Horditis and stuff. We could talk about the CCP unbanned Brian Shoneman from EVE Online because he proved he was innocent. Something about that just really amuses me. It's awesome that it happened, though. I could talk about how Cox Cable is evil and stupid. I could talk about how the developers of Titanfall have basically been forced to stop working on Titanfall in order to work on Apex Legends. I could talk about how way too much money is being thrown at me today for some reason. Well, thank you again very, very much, sir. As ever, I do very much appreciate that support, and I will put that towards the pin fund. If I can find it. Here we go. Yeah, Apex is probably one of the more clear examples of flash in a pan popularity I've seen recently, which is funny because PUBG actually did the same damn thing. I know what you're thinking. Well, PUBG is still popular. No, it's not. PUBG is still going. PUBG is still a thing, and I'm not trying to disparage PUBG, but PUBG's popularity went... Although Fortnite got into Endgame, there's a spoiler for you. Black Mace. Oh, wait, hang on. We don't actually have... Do we have Black Mace on the thing? I think we do, but whatever. Yeah, the overall viewing figures and player figures of Apex have just been plummeting. New Master 69 was the real villain of Endgame. It's true. I'm Thor, and I'm going to go over there and beat you up. No, okay, so before we actually get to spoilers, we're still not there. We're not quite to spoilers yet. I haven't put the thing up yet. I guess I can get the music playing now that I'm not playing Mario. I was going to say something that someone said something in chat, and I was going to respond to them. I actually don't remember what it is. I'm sorry. Like I said, I'm having issues here. I'm having issues. No, I did not, said Slayer. I agree with Uthor, as much as that's the weird thing whenever that happens, but I do agree with Uthor. There's nothing actually wrong with Fortnite. The game. There's a lot wrong with the industry of Fortnite and the push and pull of it on the on the influencers. That's an issue. But anyways, let's go ahead and do it. Let's bring down the spoilers thing. Okay, then I have heard of that, yes, says Slayer. I have heard of that. Sure, Palan, why not? We're in the spoilers now. There we go. It was always his sled. Now, I know chat's just going to explode about various spoilers. I would like to do this in a specific order. I'm going to actually try to be a little bit more... I basically haven't had time, Tazara. But whenever I actually have time to go and get groceries, which I'm going to have to do sometime this coming week, I will go and check it, Tazara. But no, is the answer as of this moment. It's in the stream title, Shadow Machine. This is your final warning. Big last warning. But like I said, I want to be a little more organized about this than we normally do. So rather than just jump to topics, I want to kind of go through constructurally speaking, okay? That being said, I want you guys to tell me something. Do you want me to start with the bad or end with it? My spoiler-free opinion is that it's an excellent film. Because I actually have no problem admitting that there are bad things in this film, in my opinion. In my opinion, as usual. 3 things. Thanks, Rax. I'm seeing a lot of people saying start with bad, a few people saying start with good. Oh, yeah. We were talking about this. I don't know if and Butts in chat. We've got a lot of people on right now. I want to say something up front. I've been saying this a lot lately, and I'm going to keep saying this until everyone really gets this message. We are not an echo chamber. Okay, we are not a bunch of bullies pushing an opinion or a perspective. We're not. We get a little passionate and a little heated every now and again, but if you disagree with this, say so. If you disagree, if you have a differing opinion, a differing perspective, please feel free to share. No, that is not the royal we. That is this group, the Lore Walkers. We are not perfect. But we have no problems admitting and accepting and embracing people who have differing opinions and perspectives, okay? Yeah, as long as you... The only real rule we have is don't be a dick. That's pretty much the one rule I always smack everyone in the face with. Don't be a dick to each other. As long as you're polite or understanding or, you know, have some kind of decency and respect, whatever, right? I don't like black licorice. That doesn't mean that I have to throw up a toxic ball of death every time someone brings it up, right? Anyways, let's start with the bad. Now, I'm actually not going to start with the bad that everyone's already guessed. I'm going to start with the bad that no one's guessed, because if you guys are going to hate me, I want you to hate me right up front. I didn't like what they did with Captain America. Now, let me try and explain a little bit here. Yeah, we're already in spoilers here. This is your last. This is your absolutely last call. You ready for this? This isn't a huge problem. I'll admit that. And I have to admit, as someone who actually very much firmly believes in the concept of retirement rather than killing, I'm cool with him retiring. There's other reasons I have problems with that scene. We'll get to that in a minute. But what really bothers me is that basically he went back and decided to... God, I don't even know how to phrase this properly. It felt like... I'm struggling at explaining this. It felt out of nowhere. The way it was presented bothered the crap out of me. Like, as soon as they were like, yeah, he'll be back in 5 seconds, I'm like, yeah, no, he's not coming back. Anyone could tell you that. Anyone could tell you that. And the movie overall was actually quite predictable. That's not one of my complaints, by the way. So, then it's just like Steve, and we turn, and he's just sitting there, and it's old man Steve, and like as soon as you see the guy sitting there, it's like, oh, there's old man Steve. But it's just sort of, wait, what? It really felt like it just kind of was like, oh, and by the way, he decided to do this. You know, whiplash. Huh, wait, what? Oh, of course, Skymart. Why wouldn't he? No, the hammer scene. Oh, no. We'll get to that later. It was just an absolutely bizarre, out of nowhere presentation of, yeah, he decided to go and live his life. And it felt like they had to do at least some of that on camera. And I don't like the way they did it. At all, to be completely blunt. Now, I never like to criticize without critiquing. So I'm going to go ahead and tell you how I would have done it. Don't show the he's going back scene at all. Just eject that. Have the funeral. Oh, we'll get to that. Have the funeral. Have whatever. There was another scene in between there. And then maybe have an offhand line from either Falcon or Bucky saying, you know, shouldn't he be around any time now? And the person's like, yeah, any minute now. And then they turn and they see someone, you know, kind of either walking or coming up. And that's Cap. Old at that point in time. And then basically and then go ahead and have the rest of the scene be the, okay, he decided to go back and live the rest of his life with Peggy. And there are still issues that could be said with that. But I feel like just presenting it forthrightly rather than just kind of, I don't even know how to properly explain it. My issues with the construction of the scene. It literally felt like someone was like, oh, we need to write Captain America out of the thing. Here we go. There, we wrote it. Okay. Instead, he could have come back and be like, there he is, you know, bam, right? I don't know. I really didn't like the way that they did that scene. I absolutely despised the presentation, the narrative, the flow. The whole thing made no damn sense the way they did it. Oh, also, it violated their rules of time travel, which is the other problem. Before we go on to the time travel, though, because you know I'm going to have issues with the time travel. Before we go on to the time travel, I do want to mention one thing that I've already seen. No, wait, no, Volcanto. Did you notice that back in Winter Soldier, I want to say it was, Peggy mentions her husband and children, right? No identities attached, right? Or if they were, it was vague. I actually don't remember. I meant to check this up before this, but I have already seen people theorizing that the random husband she was with was always him. Just thought I'd throw that out there real quick. So, time travel. Let me start by saying that before we actually move any further into the bad, we have the spoilers thing up, obviously. This is going to sound weird, but I don't actually think there's any real spoilers in this film. I said that to Third right after the film finished. What was there to spoil? Like, walking into the film, everything I expected to happen happened. Like, 1-to-1, almost. Now, I'm not trying to say that to brag, and I'm not saying that that's like a bad thing. It's just, it struck me as amusing considering the fact that, by the way, I did actually manage to make it to the film with no spoilers, but nothing happened that I would consider a spoiler. Well, that's not true. That's not true. Very little happened that I would consider a spoiler. It was all exactly what I expected to happen, with, I'd say, maybe 3 exceptions, 2 of which had to do with Thanos. I don't mind that. I don't actually care, per se. Again, I just think it's funny considering that I made it, and then, oh, well, okay. That's actually one of my biggest thoughts about the film as a whole, but let's save that for when we get to the good. Let's talk about the bad, because the bad is time travel. Nope, Tony's death wasn't what I would consider a spoiler. And I wouldn't consider Black Widow's death a spoiler either, to be completely honest. And Cap retiring, also not a spoiler. No, the spoilers for me would be Thanos dies in the first 10 minutes. Thanos comes back in the last 30 minutes. And I felt like there's one other one somewhere. Which I don't remember what it even is off the top of my head. But anyways, let's move on. Let's move on. Time travel. Let's talk about time travel. Let me just go ahead and say real quick that Oh, wow, hazardous. Thor being fat. No, even that I wouldn't consider a spoiler. Even walking into it, we knew Thor was more effective. I'm getting off topic. Time travel. Let's just go ahead and admit something. The time travel is kind of stupid. let's just all kind of accept that. There's nothing wrong with that. I have a lorium I call the Cloud Effect, named after an episode of Star Trek Voyager, The Cloud. The Cloud, I'm going to kind of spoil you something here. The Cloud is an episode where they have to enter a sentient nebula, which is basically a living being, and then try to heal it from the damage they accidentally did to it. Now, that sounds stupid, right? It's a surprisingly good episode. And that really is the Cloud Effect in a nutshell. Because just because you have a premise that's, really, doesn't mean the work itself is bad. Execution, presentation, all that, it matters, right? It is something that is very significant and relevant when it comes to processing fiction. Now, obviously, Cloud Effect is going to vary from person to person, but this was a clear example of Cloud Effect for me, because that is the one, Palayan, yes. Because the whole idea of, okay, we're going to go time travel. We've opened the gates on time travel and multiple parallel realities. And in so doing, we're going to fix all this. Is just, okay, whatever. But let's actually talk about the time travel itself. Because what they have is either Type 3 or Type 2 time travel. Now, I'm out of it and I got a headache, so we're going to try to do this as cleanly as we can. The first thing that they posit is the idea that time travel does not alter the past. It's one of the first things they mention. They don't explain that at all, which is bothersome, but I understand that they don't want to actually get bogged down in it. In fact, it's actually, I know this is going to sound strange, but it's one of the things that I actually very much like about the film. They don't bother trying to exposit on the rules of their time travel. Not really. If in case you don't know the scene I'm talking about, I'm specifically referring to the scene with Dr. Hulk, Bruce trying to explain things to Ant-Man and Rhodey. He's like, no, blah, 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 right? So he basically doesn't explain time travel. They just kind of vaguely say you can't change history, and that's all they really say. Okay, whatever. So we move on past that. Then we get to the point where Bruce goes back and is talking to her. And I'm trying really hard not to get into stuff I like about this film. We'll save that for later. So he goes and talks to her, and she pretty much lies it out as very classic Type 3 time travel. Now, on the off chance you don't remember the types of time travel, Type 1 time travel is definitely not this film, first of all. But Type 1 time travel is time is a linear line. Any time travel that happens always happened and always will happen. Nothing is ever changed because it always happened. Make sense? Type 2 time travel is singular timeline which is altered by existing events. So you go back and you make things change, and now Hitler, blah, blah, blah. Type 3 is the branch. Multiple worlds, multiple timelines. Every time anything is altered, anything... and there's actually multiple types of Type 3, which we'll discuss in a minute, but any time you actually do time travel, what you're effectively doing is crafting a new branch, and every time you time travel again, a new branch happens. Now, and then Hitler, yeah. Now, Type 3, I've said this before, and I will never be quiet about this. I don't like Type 3 time travel, because in my opinion, it is something that very much leads itself towards lazy storytelling. I can give you one example of that. Well, I'm not going to give you an example of that, but one type of example of that might be true is the fact that, hey, guess what? There's a Black Widow movie that they start filming this week, actually, with Scarlett Johansson in it. She's dead. Now, I know what you're thinking. It's a prequel. Personally, I think that would be a mistake, but it might, in fact, be a prequel. But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter. Because we have multiverses. We have multiple universes. It would be extremely easy to pull in another of her. If you think I'm being facetious, read the actual comics. The MCU is actually Earth 616. There are many alternate universes in Marvel Comics and in DC Comics. And that's basically part of the problem right there. Is you can just kind of bring in whoever, death doesn't matter. You can just bring the character back. You can just explain everything away without having to sit down and think or put the effort into it. All you have to do is just say, okay, new timeline, new timeline. And that's why I don't like Type 3 time travel in a nutshell. Moving on. Let's get past the opinion, because obviously this showcases itself as Type 3 time travel, right? So why is Cap old at the end of the film? In the timeline that he left. Remember, you don't alter the past. If you alter the past, then we have significant issues here. Because they alter the past all over the place. This is the problem. This is the other problem with the Cap thing. Because there is no way for the Cap thing to happen without it being different type of time travel. Because everything they present throughout the entire timeline, throughout the whole film, is very clearly Type 3. Right? Like, we can all agree with that, right? Whether we like it or not. Whether it's good or bad, or lazy writing, or good writing, or well explained. Let's leave all that at the door. I think we can all agree that it's clearly Type 3 time travel. They even have a visual thing, right? But then right at the end, all of a sudden, it just becomes Type 2. Which is single alterable timeline. Because he go back and lives out his life and then manages to end up here, right? Now, there are possibilities of explaining this away, which they obviously don't do, which is kind of an issue with the film, as if and Bud pointed out in Discord earlier today. But that is probably my biggest overall issue with the Cap thing. Because if this was a classic Type 3 time travel, as the rest of the film posits, then he would just never come back. I must admit, what did Volcanto say? Because he would never come back. He would be off in his other timeline, where he is living the rest of his life with Peggy. Which, as weird as this is going to sound, I would be fine with. In fact, that's another way you could have done the scene. No, I didn't see it, Darcy. Chat's going pretty quickly here. Ah. That's an interesting idea. So Volcanto posits an idea, which admittedly didn't occur to me. He basically, the idea that he time traveled, he basically hit the... how would he do that, though? No, I don't think it works that way. I'm sorry. Because, forgive me. Because that's a nice idea, him time traveling back at the end of it. Except, how would he do that? How do they recall to the point of time travel origination? They recall, right? They plug in the thing. They can spend however much time they have there. It doesn't matter how much time it takes them. But he is then recalled to a specific point in both space and time. The point where they go right back to. It's a recall. So, if that had happened, he would have shown up right there on the thing in the 5 seconds when he was expected to. Having recalled back to this time, this timeline, and this presentation. So he would have been old Steve right there on the timeline. Which actually, honestly, that would have worked, if I'm being honest. Instead, he's just been waiting for them over there. So, I'm sorry, I don't actually buy that. Now, that being said, these are, let's be honest with ourselves, actually fairly minor complaints. The fact that I enjoyed the hell out of this movie, oh yeah, by the way, I like the film, despite these issues, probably says something. But it does aggravate me that they basically presented the rest of it fairly logically. However, I do want to mention one thing with regards to the time travel. This isn't really a negative thing. This is just a comment. The idea that was posited can be taken one of two ways. Either once they go back to the alternate timeline, it is effectively blended to the point of being identical to the existing one. In other words, the idea that there is no alternate timeline. They basically restore it to its natural state. Or they just make it so the stone is back so that that particular timeline is not screwed. Both of those are acceptable explanations for what happens. But I was thinking about the actual sequence of events, and near as I can tell, there are two major timeline changes which are like substantial enough that even upon going back and returning the stone to the point of origin is just going to substantially and noticeably alter those timelines forever. Two big ones. You could argue there's a third one, but actually we could argue there's like five, but two really big ones. One, there's a timeline out there where there's no Guardians of the Galaxy. Right? Because Quill is knocked out on the planet, and then Thanos leaves that timeline. Yeah, exactly, Skymart. The one where Thanos is no longer present. That's the one we fight at the end of the film. So that Thanos 3 or whatever that is, he's gone from that, and the Guardians never get started. Ronan's still there, doing whatever. Then, of course, there's the one with Loki. I mean, duh, right? I've already seen a joke where someone says, "Where does Loki go?" "Oh, he goes to his television show." And let's be honest, that's probably exactly what that was there for. I think we can all accept that, right? That's going to be the Loki show's intro. Right there. Yeah. Him returning the hammer amused me, actually. So, yeah, time travel. I kind of get why they did that. I do. I do. I've said it before and I've said it again. I don't think it is how I would take the direction of it, but we've talked about that before. So, let's just move on from the time travel. I didn't like it. I didn't like the approach to time travel. I didn't like the hole that I just mentioned with Captain America, which is actually the biggest thing I didn't like about that scene. And I didn't like the way that they presented it, because if you're paying attention, since Pym is back, and they need Pym particles to time travel, and they have a semi-portable time travel device. You notice they didn't even need the big machine at the end. They just had the platform and a few devices out by the lake, right? They just suddenly have time travel now. They can just do that whenever. That's a normal thing now. So, two things have been introduced to the MCU. Time travel and multiple universes. Bam. Yeah. We'll see where that goes in the future. But it is my opinion that... Hang on, Papa Neeks. It is my opinion that when you open the door on those kind of possibilities for your storytelling, for your setting, then you have problems. Because you can't close those doors again. Not really. It would be like Superman coming back from the dead. And yeah, I know that's something that's been talked about for years. And years and years and years. But now that door has been opened. And we'll see what happens in Phase 4 and going forward. Alright. Let's go back to the beginning of the film. Let me just go ahead and admit, really bluntly, that I was in absolutely no way, there's just no way, ready for the intro of that film. Hawkeye. No, I didn't pull in. I'm sorry. Chat is going very quickly, and I'm having trouble right now. I should wait. I'm sorry. You guys are discussing. I'm trying to read people's responses. I'm obviously not reading them quickly enough. We'll just pause for a moment before we discuss the film proper. Hey, Mihawk. Yes, she did, Cashel. I have no idea if that's going to mean anything. Oh, God, yeah, chat's going very quickly here. In my honest opinion, I would say time travel is probably an upper management decision. I don't know if that's true. But I almost guarantee that was at least partially an upper management decision. Hang on, Chocolate Robe. I'll have to read this later. Because, yeah, that's a big post. But, yeah, okay, so... Hawkeye's... depends on how they do it, Darkstar. I have to admit, I'll talk more about the reboot of Gamora later. And I guess I'll talk about the reboot of Loki later. Hold on. Let me go through this sequentially. I really don't want to be kind of organized about this one. Let's go ahead and shuffle back a little bit here. Let's talk about the cold open. Of course, Blue Wolf. Oh, God. So, I don't know if you guys know, this is now public news. My sister is pregnant right now. So, she is expecting later this year. And I only mention that because that means she's going to have 2 children at that point in time. So she is a little bit on the emotional side in general, and she came to this movie with me. I'm kind of emotional anyways. I obviously have a very big, Papa Bear mentality. And, I care very much about my niece. I care very much about, children in general. I'm very protective about that. And so then we have the cold open, which was just, like, I actually heard her audibly gasp. Just this, right at the beginning. And I'm sitting here like this. Like, holding back. Like, I can't even explain it. Because we all know exactly what's going to happen. We all knew exactly where that was going, right? The moment they started there. And what I like best is they never actually showed the dusting. Because he never saw the dusting, right? He never actually saw it happen. His attention was distracted, and so the camera pans where his attention is. It's actually, so someone earlier asked about the editing. There's some brilliant cinematography work at several points in this film, and this is one of those. The camera even though the camera's not in his first person, we are effectively seeing his perspective. The camera's always showing us where he's looking and where his attention's at. And it does that. And he took over, and yeah, you can see just a few little bits of dust flying through the air, and it's just... And yeah, he didn't get to say goodbye. He didn't actually know. He didn't know anything. He was just... And then he looks over, and of course, Jeremy Renner is not the best actor in the world, but he did a phenomenal job with that scene. Actually, all his scenes, really. Just lots of... Guys? And, just this slow escalation into raw, almost screeching panic. Just... Oh, my God. Oh, God, that was fantastic. That was just, that hurt. That very, very much hurt. And yeah, now, so this brings me to another thing that I both like and dislike about this film. There's a lot of exposition that's actually absent in the film. We were talking about this in Discord earlier. Now, I both like and dislike that. I like it because it is my opinion that most of the necessary exposition is stuff that is visually presented or something that's kind of slid under the door, so you kind of get where they're going. I dislike it because it leaves a fairly large number of certain things up to interpretation. I also like it because this is already a 3-hour film, and God. But also time travel. But I mentioned that because they never show us the pieces in between. Because if you're paying attention, we see him losing his family. The next time we hear from him is actually Rhodey reporting on his activities to Widow, to Natasha. None of that needs to be exposited. We don't need to hear why he's made... Like, they don't even say exactly what he's doing. They just say, oh, God, he made a mess of him. I'm not even sure I want to find him at this point. Surprisingly good presentation there. And again, pretty good exposition for the most part, in its absence more than anything else. Another, if I could take a quick aside, another example of good exposition is the step in between when Ant-Man comes back and then he finds his way to the Avengers headquarters. Because there's just a sequence of scenes that happen pretty quickly, and we don't need all this extra exposition that he needs. We just get the relevant beats as he slowly starts to realize just how badly things have gotten. And, by the way, I can't think of his name all of a sudden. I'm sorry, who plays Scott? He's a great actor. Who plays Scott? I praised the hell out of him in Ant-Man 2 as well, because he knows how to present it. Paul Rudd. Thank you. Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd was actually, in my opinion, the best actor of this film. And I know that sounds horrible to say that, because basically everyone did a really excellent job, and I don't want to disparage that. But he nailed every beat he needed to hit, both comedic and serious. And that's one of the reasons I like Paul Rudd so much, is he can hit both of those equally. The scene where he is basically just frantically, oh God, trying to find the things, and then he notices his own name on the list, and him and his daughter. Oh my God! Could you? I know this is going to sound so horrible, but I know most of you probably don't understand what that would feel like. But I want you to picture, being an uncle, or being a father, and just losing 5 years of your child's life, like he did. That was just, that just, Oh my god! Like, as soon as I saw her face, like, vaguely through the door, I was like, that's her, that's Cassie. That's... Oh my god. And yeah, he will never get those years back. I'm going to address something real quick. Papa Neeks earlier asked if bringing them all back bothered me. And honestly, while it did bother me, it didn't take away from the film for me as much as I thought it would. And you know why? Because it cost. I've said this so many times. If you're going to kill someone in fiction and then bring them back, there are two big things to keep in mind. First of all, don't do it. But second of all, make it cost. Make there be consequence. Make it matter. And 5 years, those 5 years still happened. Those 5 years still caused drastic and significant changes for the universe, right? Yeah, I noticed there was actually quite a bit of the whole parenthood thing in this film, which I don't mind at all, by the way, but I'm getting ahead of myself. So let's rewind back a bit. So they're there, they're gathering. They're still in the wake of grief. We see Tony on the ship. You notice that they go straight from the Jeremy Renner scene to the more comedic playing football with Nebula scene, which is good. You kind of... You don't want to smash the button too hard in a given direction, right? You got to have pacing. You got to have breather points. So they're sitting there playing. This is going to sound weird, but I kind of really like how Nebula works with two of the people she ends up working with in this film. The first being Stark, the kind of person who would understand someone like her, thanks to his kind of quirky and unusual nature. But I also really liked, kind of getting to later, Nebula's interaction with Rhodey. I wasn't always like this either, but you make the best of what you got, right? Just really simple line that just was like, yeah. I also do like how Nebula had a lot stronger of a role in this, and I can't think of the actress's name. The woman who played Amelia Pond actually basically had to play two characters in this film, which was nice, but I'm getting ahead of myself as usual. So they're there bonding. It's also funny because Nebula also has kind of a unique... Karen Gillian, thank you. Has a unique skill set, which is very suited to working with Tony, because Tony is the brilliance, and she has the, I don't have to care about physics or mundane biological matters as much as other people did. Oh, I totally noticed full content, but no flirting! Him doing his final message to Potts, you know, yeah, we all kind of saw that one coming. And then the glow showed up. And I gotta admit, I had no idea who or what that was at first. I was thinking it was a ship until it resolved into Cap, or Captain Marvel, I should say, excuse me. And I was like, oh, okay. Right. Now, I'm going to go ahead and admit that that scene does bother me for a very minor reason, but it does bother me. I'm actually with if and but on this one. Because they don't explain that at all. Now, obviously we don't need to do a whole exposition of exactly how she found him. That would just bog the film down. But you don't have to do that. I'm going to go ahead and give my solution for this very simply and very cleanly. You know how I would fix that? In one of the several panning shots of Stark, I would have there be just a boop, 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 just over there in the background, right? Just boop. Just have the camera, because I'll give you an exact example of what I'm talking about. During the Hawkeye scene earlier, the camera pans down on his leg so we can see the thing around his leg, right? The house arrest thing. They don't exposit. They don't explain, as a result of my interactions with Captain America during the Civil War incident, I am currently on house arrest. They don't need to do that because they just show it really quick and we could put the rest of it together. Good exposition. I would have basically pulled the same trick. Just have, as Stark and Nebula are doing their thing, there's just this pan over this device, which is just going boop, boop, you know, just, that's all it would need. And then I would have zero issues with that. Because we already know that Marvel actually went back, right? That happened at the end of the Captain Marvel post-credit sequence. So we know she was back on Earth. We know Rocket's already back on Earth. We know Rocket probably has a decent idea of where they were. And actually, no, Thor probably knows. But anyway, somebody could probably tell them roughly where they were in like a general sense. And then they could go to that general area and then, oh, hey, there's the beacon, right? No missing dots in the middle there. We can still kind of make that up our own, but I feel like that they should have shown something there. Just my opinion. So, the scene... The scenes where they come back, Marvel is literally carrying the ship back. I do have to say really quick, I kind of like and dislike how Marvel is shown as a heavy. I like it because that is exactly what a heavy is when it comes to a team. The heavy is the big, giant freaking hammer that can just bludgeon a problem out of the way. And that's what she does every single time she's in the film, relatively speaking. I don't mean that as an insult, by the way. She does her freaking job. Ships destroyed, carrying a ship, that kind of a thing. That's a heavy. That's what a heavy does. I also have to admit, if I could just add a quick aside, even though this is skipping ahead, you'll notice now that as the heavy, she actually lost to Thanos because, well, Thanos isn't actually a heavy. He actually outthought her. And I kind of like that. But anyways, moving on. So she brings the ship down. Yeah, he was smarter. He outthought her. I mean, just... Anyways. So she brings the ship down. Tony gets off the ship. He is emaciated. Just oh, God. Oh, barely surviving, barely struggling. I really love the idea of that scene, and I really love how the actors portrayed it. There's a lot of emotion being presented in a very condensed period of time. Stark was very happy to see them. Remember, until they came back, Stark didn't know who lived. He knew he knew this happened. He knew that some of them were gone. Half were gone, but he didn't know which half. Him seeing Pepper, oh my God, Robert Downey Jr. nailed that. And yeah, as he says, I lost the kid. Like, he could barely even get it out, too. He was having trouble speaking. I lost the kid. Oh, God. And that, of course, pretty much immediately leads to the scene where Tony effectively leaves the team. Oh, hang on. There we go. Now, for me, that made perfect sense. And you know why? Tony Stark's arc has basically been from Avengers... There's no basically. Has been from Avengers to this film. It's been about stopping Thanos and the direct threat that was presented to Earth and to all on it. Everything he does in Avengers onwards is all rotating around or directly a consequence or attempt to fix that problem. The visions, he even mentions the visions, the suit of armor he wants to put around the world, the Ultron project he tried to do, everything he'd been trying to do has all been about this. And so his complete emotional breakdown makes absolutely perfect sense. What I like best about it is they didn't play it for cheap drama. They could have. They could have turned it into a shouting match or like one of those reality TV shows where everyone just, ah! Instead, everyone just kind of accepted that he was completely losing it and just tried to help and embrace him. Because they understood. Yeah, Cap just took it on the face. If Stark had actually slugged Cap, I think he would have just straight taken it. And yeah, he just literally tears the nano-arc suit from his chest and says, Here. Brilliantly portrayed, and I'm sure at least a little bit of Robert Downey Jr.'s real-life experiences were in that scene. And I don't mean that as an insult. Just because it takes a certain mentality to portray someone who is that gone. I should know. And that was a very powerful scene for it. Oh yes, Stark and Cap have always been the main characters of the MCU, up to now. It, of course, makes perfect sense that they are the two main ones that bowed out. But yeah, Thanos was in Tony's mind. I didn't have a name for him, you're right. Which is funny is because the reverse was true, too. You notice that even the past Thanos, when he hears about Earth, he's like, Earth, Avengers. Like, he actually knows. It's already on his mind, too. But I'm getting ahead of myself, as usual. So Stark's out. And then the film did one of the only things that surprised me. They go to Thanos' planet. Again, I'm going to once again praise the visual exposition, although they actually then further exposited this, which was unnecessary, but whatever. The way he looked, he was just limping, huge chunk of him just gone. The gauntlet literally fused to his hand and arm. He looked like he's, oh God. Okay. And yeah, him destroying the stones. If I was to nitpick this film, I would say that the narrative flow between them saying we're going to go find him and them actually figuring out where he is was not very well done. Nebula saying, I know where he is, was nice, but you notice she didn't. All she says is the garden, which is completely inconsequential information. It is actually Rocket who ends up figuring out where he is because they detect the second. There was just a little bit of a narrative disconnect in that scene. It felt like they were just like, okay, we need to get to Thanos. Let's go. I do love that. I was actually going to comment on that. The whole name, the whole terminology. No, I don't want to lose my faith in humanity. I have too little of that as is, Adam. Spoilers, by the way. The whole point, the Avengers title, the futility of what avenging meant, that was actually something that came up multiple times in the film, too. So, they go to Thanos' thing. He is broken. Notice how they approach him with a plan of action that, again, they don't show us the planning scene because they didn't need to. We could see by how quickly and precisely they executed it that they had been getting in position and coordinating and working like a team to bring Thanos down like that. And they do. I'm pretty sure that if Thanos actually had the stones, that he still would have lost that fight because of the way they coordinated themselves properly. So they just and off with the arm. Okay, we're good. We're good. Done, right? Just bam. And, yeah, he destroyed the stones to remove the temptation. Now, something I liked about that was the idea that he probably meant his own temptation. I point that out because the Thanos we saw throughout Infinity War and the Thanos we see at the beginning of this film is a Thanos who has grown a bit. I kind of refer to this as the Ganondorf thing over in Wind Waker, right? Not to spoil an unrelated game. But, the villain who, having gone through stuff, has basically reached the point where he has a greater wisdom or understanding of both himself and things. So he did it, and now that he did it, he wanted to make sure that he didn't go any further, like, wiping out all of the universe. So he removed his own possibility. He removed the temptation from himself. At least that's what I think of it. We're not actually sure. He could have removed it for other people, too. No, exactly. He went through a spiritual arc, I agree. He is a terrifying, brutal berserker towards the end of this film. But of course he is. That's the Warlord Thanos from several years ago. But I'm getting off topic. So they kill him, which is just wow. Thor knocks his head off. Shunk! That's the end of that. Thanos is dead. 5 years later. Now, in my opinion, that was probably one of the most brilliant things the film did. It was also one of the only things I didn't actually anticipate. Like I said, it was one of the few things that surprised me. Them just, bam, Thanos is dead 5 years later. I was like... Now, if you remember, I'd pointed out on several of my trailer analysis that based on a presentation, based on a lot of the visual stuff in the trailer... Oh, we did too, Justin. We had a great audience, by the way. Yes, I do, Darkstar, absolutely. I said many times that obviously there's going to be a big gap of time. For society to have not only reached the point where they have had this happen, but they're now kind of recovering from it, that implies time. If you remember, I said at least months, bare minimum, right? What I did not expect was for that to be a jump in midstream. I expected that the film would begin 5 years later. I was wrong. The film begins 23 days later. They actually say it outright. And then, 5 years later, just, what? And then just the slow panning shots of desolation. Now, I'm not actually sure what I think of the reality of this. Like, what's the population of Earth right now? Real quick. I know that sounds like a dumb question, but... Oh, and obviously they do kill birds and animals as well. They actually mentioned 7 billion? That doesn't sound right. Is it something? Okay, 7 billion. So, when was the last time the Earth had 3 billion people in it? Like, you probably know why I'm asking this. I'm saying a lot of different answers in chat. God, is our population really exploding that quickly? Wow. I suppose I could actually look it up here real quick. My overall point, though, is that as much as I like the idea of the empty world that they continuously present, I don't think a world with 3 billion people in it is that empty. I know that sounds so callous, and again, this is nitpicking, but they consistently portray the world up until, excuse me, it was the right hand, up until this, they consistently portray it as this desolate, empty, horrible place. I'm with that, because they want to get across the emotional impact, right? Okay, 1960, there you go. I like that. And that's the thing. I'm still with it. That's why I say this is a very minor nit. I'm still with it because, and someone in chat, Something Classic just mentioned this. As they already show, I mean, there's a reason Captain Frickin' America, 5 years later, is still trying to reach out to people and get them to keep going. That one guy has just started dating for the first time. 5 years! Think about how long of a period of time that is, really quick. I mean, picture everything that's happened in your life in the last 5 years, real quick. It took them that long to get to the point where they're just barely starting to think about moving forward. Just kind of thinking about trying to move on, right? So I'm still with it because what it portrays is, to borrow from Final Fantasy VI, the world of ruin. A world that has not just had a lot of death, but instead is a world that has a lot of emotional scarring. A world that has given up. And that is what is consistently portrayed, visually, almost consistently throughout the whole thing. Which, by the way, I'm just going to kind of fast forward for the next couple of scenes because it's just hammering that point over and over. But they do a wonderful job of it. Oh yeah, and I'm going to say something really quick here. I don't want to start a thing, but I really like how the guy was talking about dating another guy and no one made a big deal of it or even highlighted it. It was portrayed completely normally. Because that's how I think fiction should do that. My opinion. Moving on. So it was just normal. Just yep. And yeah, the fact that was, I actually didn't know which of the Russo brothers that was, but the fact that was him, that was awesome. Anyways, so they're showcasing the aftermath. Yeah, Rogers didn't care. Rogers didn't bat an eyelash. Why would he? Although, well, we'll talk about that when we get there. The absence of birds was a nice touch too, by the way. I mean, if you figure a lot of birds would be dead, right? What actually happens next after that? They cut to, we basically explain why Captain Marvel is absent for the film at that point. And if I'm being honest, I'm with the explanation. Like, I really am. You guys are here. No one else is anywhere else. So, she's gonna be busy. Yeah, okay. That makes sense. We get the brief thing about Ronan doing his thing. Yeah. Although I gotta be honest, when he first started describing the scene of the people and the bodies, the first thing I noticed was the mention of the word bodies. Because that means they weren't dusted. These are people who were killed recently. Okay, I'm with that. My first thought was suicide. I thought he was reporting in that he found another group of suicide victims. She is effectively more of a plot device, and that is part of the problem. She's a heavy. I said this before, and I said this again. Now, that being said, I have to admit, I don't necessarily think I would have actually written her out in that manner. I would have probably written her out of the heist in general, though, because they don't need that talent on a heist. She's a heavy. That's not how you bring on a heist, right? Again, playing to your strengths, playing to your slot in a team. If you're the barbarian from Diablo 3, you don't bring the barbarian from Diablo 3 to sneak into a room and very carefully and precisely remove something from it without anybody noticing, right? Anyways, I'm getting off topic. As I do. Yeah, go ahead, Hazardous. Yeah, Bruce wasn't even a heavy anymore. Oh yeah, by the way, real quick, let's just go ahead, because what we do is the next, so this film has 4 parts to it. It's an extremely typical, depends on which universe, but in this one, not really has this, no. It's an extremely typical act structure, which makes perfect sense. Act 1, the fallout. Act 1 was all about dealing with the consequences of. Act 2, the fan service. Let's just call it what it is. There's no need to hide from it. Act 2 was, let's go ahead and embrace the MCU. It was all small, tight character moments. It was developing and expanding on their character arcs. It was also fleshing out the background. We saw a lot of little details of stuff that we never saw before. They pulled in everybody. Like, a lot of characters basically had one-off cameos. But it worked. Because they would have been there. I know Huthor is going to massively disagree with me on this, but the fact of the matter is, they actually showed a lot of really good continuity in the time travel section. Not because of the time travel, but because they actually showed a lot of what would have logically been happening that we didn't see on camera. Yeah, Robert Redford being there makes perfect sense. Crossbones or Skullbones, whatever his name is, and the Hydra team makes perfect sense. The Ancient One defending the New York place against the Unvoting makes perfect sense. All of that slides in perfectly and neatly, and that was actually kind of awesome. I believe so, yes, Nar said. I believe he came back just for this. So that's Act 2. The MCU. Act 3 is your typical final battle, which I'm okay with because it was such an incredibly awesome final battle. We'll get to that. And then, of course, the epilogue. So, in the Aftermath section, they spend a huge, long stretches of time just dealing with, here's how everyone is coping. Which brings us to how everyone is coping. Cap? Cap is being Captain America. He has the mask on, full tilt, right? He is someone who is being the pillar of iron for others, but he himself, as he so wonderfully says, has not moved on at all. Widow is just barely holding on at all. Is someone who is having trouble even managing to make it through to tomorrow at this point in time. Marvel's off doing her thing. Rhodey is being awesome. Of course, I love Don Cheadle, but everyone's just kind of okay. And then we cut to Hulk or Bruce. I'm going to start calling him Bruce because it's Professor Hulk now. And that's the first real big question I want to ask you guys. I'm going to pay very close attention to chat because I imagine this is going to start flying by in a second here. What do you think about Professor Hulk? About Bruce? Yeah, the peanut butter jelly sandwich thing was awesome. It's another one of those things that happened off camera. A lot of things happen off camera in this film. I'm seeing a lot of similar things here. The idea of they should have, wish we'd seen the arc, even though it is a logical arc. I agree, by the way, it is actually very logical that Bruce and Hulk would have effectively truly merged. Like, really became the same person. And again, 5 years. It's a long time. So it makes sense. But yeah, as Cashel points out, as many people have pointed out, the fact that it happened off camera is something we just kind of have to swallow. I'm with it, by the way. First of all, because I think Mark Ruffalo is a great actor. But second of all, because I think that he does a good job of basically playing Bruce, who is now also... How do I phrase this? He felt like the in-between. He felt like he wasn't as sheepish or tense or just that kind of, thing that he going on for Bruce. He also didn't feel as, me stupid, like Hulk. He actually did feel like a bit of an in-between, which I think was a good thing. And yeah, I absolutely think he lost some strength going in between. I agree. Which honestly was probably a good thing. It was probably a good thing that he's no longer as much of a heavy as the Hulk was. Because let's be honest, the Hulk is a hell of a heavy. He is way high tier. Even in the MCU, he's high tier. But no, before we actually go to him, we first cover Ant-Man showing up. So several people in chat have already said it. We all know it. Ratatouille is the true hero of the film. I want to share something real quick with you guys. So I have a problem, and I actually apologized to Third several times. I was quite vocal in this film because it was getting a hell of an emotional reaction out of me at multiple times. But exactly, 1 in 14 million possibilities, a rat hits a button. But at the beginning of the scene, we see the van, and I see the rat moving, and I'm like, oh! And the audience is completely dead silent. I'm like, because what tends to happen, and this is not bragging, I feel really embarrassed every time this happens, is I tend to get things, or at least, I guess I should say, I tend to react to things sooner than other people do. So I was the only person who said, ah! And then I had to do this, because the whole audience was quiet. And I'm like, whoops, sorry. And then like 10 seconds later, the rat started pressing buttons. And then the audience was like, oh, right. I was like, oh, God, yes, that. Now I can react. Now I can react, right? I have that problem in films. That actually happened several times in this film. Like when the hammer moved. Anyways, so rat hits the button. He comes out. I already commented on this. Oh God, I can't think of his name. Paul Rudd. Paul Rudd is amazing. I cannot praise that enough. He is phenomenal. He accurately portrays someone who, again, 5 hours. That's a decent chunk of time, but that's it. But then he's going through that, and then there's this nice big, what happened here, kid? And oh my God, and then the memorials. And what I love about the memorial scene is if you look at it, the visual present a lot of good wide shots in this film. We already talked about that. One of the visual presentations there was it shows them like their gravestones. It's only till, like, say, 5 seconds into the shot that they allow people to start moving around a little bit more, and your attention is drawn from the gravestones to the people. And that's the moment you realize that those gravestones are like 20 feet tall. Or like, what is that? 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18. Like 7 meters tall, right? And it's just... oh. And then you start to realize just how many names have been inscribed on this. Just in this one place, just in San Francisco. And, he goes, meets his daughter. Oh, that scene hurt. That scene hurts so much. Do they sort the names properly? I don't know. Yeah, stonemasons made a killing. I've always wondered what the economy did in the absence of, half of life. So he goes, he meets his daughter. He goes, he's losing. He's like, oh God, oh God, oh God. Now, how do I deal with this? It's funny you mentioned the streets looking trashed. The moment I saw the streets looking trashed, I thought, this is a post-apocalypse. This is literally a post-apocalypse. In fact, now that I'm thinking about it, this is arguably more of an apocalypse than most post-apocalypse stories tend to have. 3 billion people dying, just if we ignore everything else, just Earth. 3 billion people. Whoa, Anyways. Hi, Revan. No, you've only missed about... oh, God, we've been talking for an hour already. He goes back. He's got his weird psychedelic plan. And, of course, he's talking about using the quantum realm to warp back. We all knew that was coming. Yeah, suicides. I guarantee you there were suicides. I guarantee it. By the way, real quick, I mentioned the World of Ruin feeling, the absentee visual presentation of a lot of things. Just another quick talk on that, really quick. The scene with the support circle, which had, 8 people there? And 8 people in one corner of a very large room, most of which is empty with the chairs put up on the desks. That's visual shorthand right there, and it's brilliant. Anyways. Oh, God, 3.5 billion bodies. I don't want to think about that. We've had enough problem with that with real-life plagues, killing millions. But yeah, people would give up. So, funny fact, there's a site out there which will tell you whether you have been snapped or not. I've actually said this before. I actually used that snap myself. My niece was fine. My sister was fine. Most of my family was actually fine. I died. And And no, that's gonna. You're probably thinking, oh, ha ha ha. But my first thought was, thank God, because if that was reversed, I'm not actually sure I could take that. I am legitimately not sure if I could endure that. Like, if my family was gone, and my family was gone. Whew. Anyways. So, moving on. They come up with a big plan. They go to Tony's place. We see Tony's daughter. Now, when I looked at that, I was just like, yeah. No, yeah, that makes perfect sense. He has pieced out. Tony has moved on. He lost. He took it on the chin. And he said, I'm out. And went to be with Pepper and her. And yeah, the moment you saw that, it's like, yeah, that's, of course he's dying. He has the most to lose. So actually, that's not true. I shouldn't say that. What I saw the first time when I saw that wasn't that Tony would die. It was actually, I thought that Tony would be the biggest obstacle to the time travel plan. Because Tony has something to lose in the now. And they actually make a big point of that multiple times. I can't lose what I've got, and we get back what we lost. That's a point several times. And of course he was at first. He was like, no, I'm not doing this. Also, the kid really was adorable. Mommy said I came out here to save you. Consider me saved. Oh, I saw that max time. Because, see, that was going to be my point. This is... Tony... Well, I've already said this, haven't I? His whole shtick for years in universe has been about solving this problem. It's been an equation that he needs to construct back into a workable formula. And so, as Max Time points out, he'd already been kind of working on this. He'd already been kind of thinking about this. They bring in the idea of quantum tunneling. They bring in the quantum realm. That adds a variable to the equation he didn't know existed. So he starts thinking about it. He sees the picture of Spider-Man, of Parker, and that's just like, yeah, okay, I just want to run this real quick. And then he has a really, really touching moment with his daughter, which just, yeah. Anyways, 3,000. Anyways, he even made the rescue suit. He even made the rescue suit. I think it's rescue. Is that right? Oh, that sucks, Max Time. I'm sorry. He spoiled the line. God. Like I said, I managed to walk into this completely spoiler-free somehow. So then we get to the bit where we kind of the theme. Basically, that's effectively the end of the first act right there. We've shown the consequences. We've shown how it's impacting our main characters. Oh, I missed one. Sorry, I did miss one. I apologize. I missed Thor. So we go first. We see Valkyrie. Obviously, we already knew she was alive, so that's not really news. We also see. Well, I shouldn't say that. It is implied that she's the one actually taking care of the Asgardians because he's holed up and not doing anything. And then we see Thor. Now, one of the things that Hemsworth himself has said multiple times is that he prefers being able to act the comedic Thor more than the serious Thor. Now, that's of course his preference, but it's pretty clear that most of the presentation of Thor tends to be more on the comedic side than the serious side. I'd say since Thor 3 and onwards, but honestly, that's not quite true. He was still fairly comedic even back in Thor 1. He did obviously hit his low point, and I will actually say that him being brought down does make a lot of sense. I'm not sure I'm 100% with the way they did it, but the way he was just dropped down makes perfect sense. In fact, I remember an interview. I've never actually... This one's kind of stuck in my head. Because the brothers have been interviewed about the specific events of Infinity War several times. And they have mentioned two things repeatedly in those interviews. One was that Quill really did screw things up on Titan. If Quill hadn't screwed things up, they would have won. The other thing they mention is that Thor wanted revenge. That he basically he wanted Thanos to know that he beat him, that he bested him, that he was better than him, and then he'd kill him. And that is very clearly portrayed in this film. Thor screwed up. What's funny is if you rewind for a second, that's usually what the villain does in fiction. No, seriously. Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan. Khan has ambushed the Enterprise, and the Enterprise is at its mercy, and he could just win right there. But he doesn't, because he has to let Kirk know that it was him who beat him. And as a consequence of doing, Kirk manages to turn it back around on him. It's a very common thing. Yeah, Thanos does that too, you're right. Villain Thanos absolutely did that. So Thor basically pulls the villain card. Like, I'm not saying he is a villain. I'm saying he does that. He has to boast. He has to rub it in his face. And that's what did that. That's what allowed that to happen. Which, again, Thor knows that. And it comes across very clearly. It comes across very, very clearly that Thor realizes that he screwed up in that moment. And that he is probably the most singularly responsible for all this garbage. Now, I will admit that I didn't quite like some of his comedic take in this film. I'll go ahead and admit that. There were several scenes where I was just like, okay.
Oh, welcome. Pay close attention. Hopefully you'll learn something.
Probably not. I don't teach anything new. Hang on a second. Wait, what? Oh, I get you. Okay, Vigilance. Sorry. It formatted the text really weird, so that was very hard to read. I was trying to understand what you were saying there. Thank you, as always, Vigilant. Very, very much appreciated. Let me jot that down to the Jedi Academy Fund, which I am keeping track of. Uh-oh. And there's Cority. Hi, Cority. Thank you very, very much. As ever, much appreciate to both of you. And I do appreciate those subs, and I do appreciate those donations. I want to put that towards lunch today. But seriously, though, do you want to put that towards something, Corty? But yeah, no, Thor clearly has the most guilt. I agree. Absolutely. And the thing is, he came across as just a little bit too... I don't know what to say it. Well, okay, thank you again, Corty. If you don't have any interest in future streams, that's fine. Just, you know... Like the idea that let me give you the scene that actually bothered me the most. It was the scene when he was like, all right, tell us about the ether stone. Okay, well, there's a stone. And it's not really a stone. That's the first thing we need to fix, is it's not really a thing. It's just this liquidy kind of a mesh thing. And, you know, and it's something about that exact scene just kind of made me go, yeah, okay. Let's move forward. Like, I get where that whole scene was going, but Thor's presentation of that just kind of made me go, Of course Fortnite survived the apocalypse. What else would people play in 5 years? FF6? The fat suit that they had going on for him, I gotta be honest, I kept waiting for him to basically remove that. Like, I kept waiting for them to basically get rid of the fat suit, or for him to work it off, or, you know, pull a Mr. Incredible from Incredibles, for example. Or even just magically do it. When he grabbed the axe and the hammer to him and flung all the light into him, I actually thought they would get rid of that. They didn't. Although, they did actually make it work once he put a shirt on. So. But they never did. In fact, he's still fat at the very end of the film, which is kind of funny in its own right. Fair enough, Chocolate Rob. But yeah, whatever. I don't know. I like and dislike what they did with Thor. Because Thor, the bumbling kid, like I just mentioned, didn't really work for me. Thor, the guy who was literally having a legitimate panic attack about being in the past, that worked for me brilliantly. Because if you think about it, both are the same thing. Both is Thor broken. It's just one of them is the one where he's just kind of... And the other is him mentally and emotionally, which actually worked a lot better for me. and also was just a real power scene. But so yeah, then we have the second act. I actually have to admit, the first act was good. The second act, the second act is the weirdest act. This is the most Cloud effect for me, because I stand by my statements about the time travel. I'm sorry, I really do not like the time travel, and I've already talked about that. But I actually loved the second act. I really did. I loved. They go to the scene where he says, "I'd like that drink now," and they're like, "All right, we'll pose later. We'll get a pose shot later. Come on, let's go. Let's get the stone." Like, they show, and then what? They show what happened off camera at so many moments in Avengers, in Thor 2, and in Guardians of the Galaxy. I'll give you another perfect example of this. And then it cuts to the perspective over here where we don't hear the music. And he's just kind of, it's just exactly what it would sound like. Yeah, it felt like behind the scenes. It was great. It was pure fan service. But as I've said many, many times, fan service is not necessarily a bad thing. It depends on how you do it and why you do it. And this was clearly, in my opinion, this was clearly, the MCU is awesome. And let's just spend an hour showcasing how awesome the MCU was. Like, that's what that whole thing felt like to me. I'm going to kind of fast forward through a bit of this, because there's not a lot to really talk about there. You know? I didn't care for it, Koroti. I mentioned that at the beginning of this video. I don't want to repeat myself because people already hate me, but I didn't care for their approach to time travel. But yeah, like, and I'd already kind of mentioned several of these. Oh God, like, the Ancient One defending New York. The elevator scene. The elevator scene. Okay, I gotta admit something. I actually felt really embarrassed by the elevator scene. Not because it was bad, but because I laughed so hard. Because that was funny for like 3 separate reasons. First, the most obvious one. Like, they're just, they do the whole thing like he's going to do another elevator beatdown. The second is just on the face of it. But the third is the comics. Now, for those of you who don't actually know or aware of this, there was actually a fairly decent decently long comic arc about how Captain America was secretly a Hydra agent for all these years, but no, he wasn't really, and let's not get into it. But the point being, it was a rather controversial move to turn Captain America into a Hydra agent for obvious reasons. And that was just a brilliant little nod to that. But what I love even more about it is then they just do a quick jump cut to him walking out with the thing, because of course they do. Oh, he's with us. So they immediately just stop questioning it. That was phenomenal. Oh, that was great. That was great. I loved it. I loved it. The reason I felt embarrassed is I laughed very loudly at that, and I louder than I meant to. Like, usually I'm actually in reasonable control of my own outbursts. I actually lost control of my own outbursts several times in this film because it hit me strong enough, and that was one of them. I was just, and I immediately did this, like, woo. And of course, that's America's ass. Which is funny because they've already established that Scott kind of... Oh, go to hell, Dakota. They've established several times that Scott is basically a Captain America fanboy. And that's not exactly a new thing. He was that multiple times in 2 previous movies. I'm sorry, I didn't mean that, Dakota. And his man crush was so on display, it was actually funny. I love it. You know, that's America's ass. And of course, he looks down at his own ass. They couldn't resist, could they? They couldn't resist having the mirror match, could they? They had to have the mirror match. What I find hysterical is that Cap doesn't actually try to explain anything. He's just like, yep, nope. Fight. Bucky's still alive. What? Or, I can do this all day. Yeah, I know. So I suppose we should mention the other thing. We've kind of already mentioned this, but Loki just grabs the Space Stone and pieces out. Now, I want to mention that the reason the reason that stuck with me is because it's one of the extremely few scenes that isn't wrapped up or acknowledged. Like, there's no conclusion point to it at all. It basically happens, the end. Now, again, as I mentioned earlier, we've already joked that, Loki pieces out to go to the TV show, and that's probably exactly what they're going to do with that. I'm not actually sure I like that, but at the same time, I suppose it's a better option than bringing him back from the dead, or setting it before he died. But yeah, Tom Hiddleston doesn't have a lot of scenes in this film, but he's like, okay, and then he's out. He's gone. I also do kind of love the whole. I already mentioned this. Robert Redford comes back in, the director, and we see the beginnings of the argument that probably actually happened in our setting. And they never actually conclude it because we interrupt it. The heart attack happens. But I'm actually very curious how that argument ended up. Because if you remember, at the end of Avengers 1, they're actually, the council is pretty pissed at him for letting Thor take the Tesseract and Loki. And we get to see a little bit of that actually happen on camera, basically. The beginning of the argument that was starting there between Professor Redford, or Secretary Redford, and Thor was effectively what that was. And of course Stark, who was pushing back against that. And yeah, the whole time Hulk's like, I hate stairs. No more stairs. At least he didn't say no more stars. Yeah, exactly, Pauline. Yeah, the heart attack. Yep, no, gotcha. What else did they showcase? Obviously, so what's funny is almost all of the past stuff was, again, kind of things going as according to plan and just reconnecting with previous people. But, someone help this man, we need a medic. The Nebula stuff. Before I talk about the other thing, I want to talk about the Nebula stuff. So let's just go ahead and admit this. The Nebula thing was plot convenience. I think we can all just accept that was just, yeah, okay, plot convenience, whatever. Fine. Yep. Sucks. Whatever. Right? It even happened at exactly the right time, or exactly the wrong time, depending on how you think of it. Which, yeah, okay, whatever. I do love that Thanos picked up on it immediately. As someone, I think Rax actually said earlier, Thanos is a genius in a bruiser body. He is actually a smart person. That's his shtick, is his mind, more than anything else. I mean, if you look at his power kit, he's just the Hulk. High defense, high strength. That's it. It is the rest of him that actually makes him Thanos. So, the fact that he put that together very, very quickly, the fact that he acknowledges, like, okay, and then pretty much had a plan of action in place almost immediately for dealing with that, that's pretty nice. I also admit, I really liked, and I already kind of commented on this, I really liked how, oh, absolutely, Rex. They are the product of their minds and their tools, basically. Which is why it's appropriate that Tony is the one who... So yeah, that is destiny fulfilled. What I find interesting, though, is he doesn't seem to be particularly bothered by his own death. Which makes sense, actually. His older self wasn't particularly bothered with it either. But he is bothered by the idea that they undo it. And that just can't happen. We'll get to that in a minute. Oh, of course, Cool Walker. I agree completely, Palayan. And I think that's kind of a problem in some ways. But again, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. We see Gamora. So, okay, yeah, let's talk about the Gamora thing. Obviously, different Gamora. This is a Gamora who never went through Guardians of the Galaxy 1, Guardians of the Galaxy 2, or Infinity War. And we know that some time passes there in between. Like, Guardians 2 very clearly showcases that there's been a gap in between 1 and 2. Infinity War obviously shows there's been another gap in between those two. That is a lot of character growth that they have basically just... Oh, wrong hand, sorry. There we go. And that could be bad. That's easy, Savacom. I mean, he actually mentions he mentions that, people can be blinded by their obsession. Anyways, I actually have no idea. I really don't what they're going to do with her in the future. Like, Thor is apparently on the team. And yeah, where the heck is Gamora? Because she wasn't actually on the ship. At least I didn't see her. So I'm really curious if she's just piecing out of the franchise. I'm honestly curious, because that is effectively a different character. In fact, it's actually worse than a different character. It's a reverted character. We kind of started to see this with Nebula. In fact, I was actually worried they were going to do that with Nebula, what they ended up doing with Gamora. And we'll see, I guess. I'm really not sure what I think of that. I'm really not sure. Okay, apparently Quill was... Well, I saw the searching, but I didn't have enough time to read it in reverse quickly enough, so I guess I missed that. But no, they didn't send Gamora back. She's still there. They didn't send anyone back, really. So we'll see where they go with that. As I already mentioned, I like Rhodey and Nebula. I felt the two had good chemistry together. And obviously the whole thing with the Nebula and the other Nebula was basically a way just to get Thanos into the present. Before we hit the military base, I want to talk about the Thor thing really quick. I know I already mentioned this. But first of all, Rene Russo did a really... No, Anthony. Did a very good job of portraying the wizened old woman who is just... She's seen stuff and she has got this. In many ways, she reminded me of Guinan in that scene. Like, yeah, you're from the future. I get it. No. I was raised by witches, hon, okay? just immediately picks up on things there. And he starts talking, and what I love is when we come into him just pouring his heart out to her, we start with him actually explaining the end of, I screwed up, I failed. And, her thing, yes, of course you failed. It doesn't make you, wrong or horrible, it makes you a failure. And he's like, oh, thanks, Mom. But again, that's the truth, isn't it? Now, this is part of why I like the fan servicey section of Act 2, is because the three titular characters, the three main characters, because let's be honest, there are three main characters of the MCU, Thor, Cap, and Stark. All three of them got to see and meet something from their past to help them kind of come to grips with where their present was. And his was one of the only people he could have talked to really reach him when he was at his absolute lowest. And Thanos, you're right, that's fair, Chocolate Rob. So, the four that end up fighting in the end. That was, yeah. Eureka of time travel. I also love how she noticed him, like skulking around. Of course, he's never exactly been known for his stealth. Yeah, the fact that they got Natalie Portman back is interesting. Although she actually mentioned, the actress mentioned that she would finally be okay with coming back. I actually mentioned that in a rumination that's going live later this year, because that was already news prior to now, back when I recorded those videos. But anyways, and I was curious if they were going to go anywhere with it. Apparently they did. Hang on, Dante. So then he's like, hang on. And what? Hang on. Takes a second sometimes. There we go. I'm still worthy. I'm still worthy. Because that's the other thing, right? It could have been not new footage. I thought they did get Portman back. They credit her, but they might have just credited her for old footage, so I'm not actually sure. I don't know. I'll go ahead and admit that. So he was worthy. They go back. So that just leaves two. That leaves... Yeah, his happiness was great. That just leaves the military base and Vormir. The military base was... Both of these were big, emotional, impacting moments. And what I love most is both of them were played as singular, tight character moments. There was no difficulty that they had to overcome. There was no obstacle. Both of them just kind of moved. Both Stark and Cap just... They won, right? There was nothing that really contrasted them. And as weird as this sounds, I actually like that, because I think that's what that scene should have been. It shouldn't have been an obstacle to overcome. That's not really the point of this entire section of the film, right? This is not them trying to win. This is examining them and the MCU as a whole. And it was very human how both Stark and Cap basically just were stopped dead by seeing, by seeing Carter and by seeing Howard. Did Howard Stark know about Hydra? I mean, probably not. He did mention the Zola thing, though. He was actually looking for Zola, but again, I'm not sure. But yeah, Howard Stark, what I love about that is Howard just comes across as kind of a person until there's a jump cut, and then when we come back, he's actually being a lot more casual. Like, his whole demeanor has relaxed substantially around Tony. Do you notice that? And that makes sense. Tony probably would actually get along pretty well with Howard at that point in history. And so, as several people in chat have said, the fact that Tony was able to finally to finally reach out to and resolve his dad issues. Yeah, oh yeah, Zola was totally paperclipped. That's absolutely true. He was able to resolve that. He was able to reach out to him. A great quote, which technically makes this kind of a paradox, but the idea, no amount of money. I forget how he says it. He says it brilliantly. All the money in the world never bought a second of time. And yeah, Howard just kind of weirdly opening up to this guy about his child and about how, I don't know, is there an operating manual for this thing? How do I make this work? I want it to be a woman. I want it to be a girl. I don't want it to be someone like me. And it's just, there's just a frank openness. He was probably more open than he should have been to Tony, but I'm okay with it again because fan service, that's the whole part of this section. And yeah, both of them were effectively parents at that point, probably dealing with it and coping with it. And I love the hug. And I know that sounds so stupid, because it was just exactly as awkward and heartwarming as it probably should have been. Howard's just like... And Tony gets like halfway through the hug before he realizes how awkward this probably seems. And then he's just like, yep, sorry, where I come from. Oh yeah, and like the 5 or 6 references to how his mustache is. Oh, and Jarvis. You noticed Jarvis, right? Obviously that was, I can't think of his name, the guy who plays Jarvis there. But I look at that. Thank you for your service to the country. I don't know if something actually confirms or denies this, but the moment I saw Jarvis there, I was like, oh, Howard put Jarvis, or duplicated Jarvis, or made a thing based off of Jarvis, Paul Bettany, that's him, as a thing to help take care of his kid. Something like that it just sort of clicked with me. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if that's in the comics or whatever. I know there is an EU for the MCU. Cap's thing was arguably simpler, but just as impacting. Like, they didn't spend as much time as it. And yeah, I know that Jarvis was in the Agent Carter show. I do know that, obviously. I don't know why it never clicked with me before. I guess I'm just an idiot. Him just seeing her through the blinds, and there's this wall in between them. And he doesn't say anything. The camera just stays on him for several long seconds as his emotion is playing across his face, and he lowers his hair. Yeah, Pym. That was good. Yeah. Oh, interesting, Martin. I wonder why they didn't actually get Bettany to... whatever. I mean, it's not like Bettany doesn't do physical acting. He was in Solo. Anyways. Yeah. So they get the Pym particles. They go back. Woo! The Stan Lee cameo. This very clearly recorded long before this film happened. Didn't get as much of a reaction as the Stan Lee cameo back in Captain Marvel. We did get a good reaction, but it wasn't quite as riotous as a reaction. So, Vormir. So, I'm sure we all saw this coming. Like, right? They said, which is funny, because this is, again, if we're being a little bit blunt, this is straight up plot convenience, because they happened to send frickin' God, I can't think of his name all of a sudden. Hawkeye. They sent Hawkeye and they sent Widow to Vormir, and that's just like... And the moment they started setting off to this, like... Now, I thought it was going to be Clint. Thank you, Clint, yes. I thought it was going to be Clint. I really did. You know, that was going to be kind of the whole thing. And then they fight each other. And he's like, sorry about this. And then they fight each other. And then they fight each other. And I actually started laughing to myself, not out loud. Trying not to be rude. And because I actually started thinking to myself, oh, I guess that's one way to get the superheroes to fight each other. No, I'm going to sacrifice myself. No, I'm going to sacrifice myself. There we go. Oh, Clint absolutely had more to live for. But I actually thought he was going to be the one to sacrifice himself, too. It's really messed up, because she's not even trying to hold on. He is gripping her as tightly as he can, and he's basically stuck. Yeah. Yeah, Hawkeye just keeps living through everything. I honestly, as weird as this may sound, I don't actually have much else to say about the Vormir scene. It was great. It really was a great scene. But I do like what Ahab mentioned in chat, because it's absolutely right. It's the one big thing I want to point out. The contrast is just phenomenal. We have two people who are quite literally fighting each other to not let the other sacrifice themselves, compared to Thanos, who, within seconds, accepts killing Gamora. And for all the fleshing out and the presentation that they've done to turn Thanos into an interesting and dynamic character, that contrast really brings it into focus, I think. That for all of the depths of Thanos' character, at least back in Infinity War, he really was still mad. And a villain. And, yeah. And yeah, Natasha finally paid her debt back to Clint. God. And the other thing that really bothered me is the moment I saw that, I knew that she wasn't coming back. Even though she's actually acting in a film that's coming out next year. Oof, whatever. Would suicide have worked? Honestly, I think it would, Belayan, but I don't know. We don't really know a lot about the rules there. And we know how rules magic tends to be. We're a long way from Budapest. Yeah. Honestly, I was thinking something like that might happen next time, but only at the last few seconds. I also find it amusing that Red Skull was just watching them doing that. Why didn't Cap notice it was Red Skull? Yeah, there's a lot of stuff that Cap would have had to do off camera. People have already been making fun of that, right? Okay, so you're going to have to go here. Well, I'm not sure how you're going to put the Soul Stone back, but there's the Red Skull's there, so don't worry about that. You need to get the Space Stone back to this planet place. We don't have the casing for it, so you're going to have to find a new casing for it. We're going to have to put this stone... Like, the only stone that would have been easy to put back would be the green one. Remember, he didn't even have the scepter for the other one. Oh, yeah, I got to inject the ether back into Natalie Portman. Just you know, there we go. Like, a lot of that is a little wackier than it probably should be. Well, I mean, since we're having alternate timelines, I suppose that's true, Chuckler Up, although I've already given my opinion on alternate timelines, so moving on. That right there is why I don't like alternate timelines, because it's the easy answer. And no problem, no conflict. You can't say there's any plot holes here, because there aren't. It just works. Well, I saw you say that earlier, Hazardous. I still think that would be amusing. So then, son. What? No. Okay, so Act 2 ends. Then we get to Act 3. Act 3 was the fight against Thanos. Now, this is going to sound weird, Because this is the fight that I've been wanting since Avengers 1. Because it was a twofold fight. It was an army versus an army, and it was Thanos versus the big trio. And it was actually pretty much 100% fan service as well. Now, even though I've already been disagreed with on this, I actually lost control for just a second during the film. It's extremely rare that I do this in real life, where I actually just said, yeah! And that was for the Avengers Assemble. But I'm getting a little bit too far ahead of myself, so let's actually rewind a second before we get to the final fight. They build the glove, they put the things on it, we know that that's the other Nebula. I have to admit, I didn't actually know what Nebula was doing. I didn't realize she was bringing back the freaking ship to the present, although that worked very, very well. So they're all discussing who should use the glove. Now, you remember how I mentioned earlier that Thor, worked for me when he was broken? That scene was an excellent example of that. The fact that Thor, please, let me do something right. Let me actually do, please, just let me fix this. And of course, that grief and that guilt just comes pouring out of him. Just, but Hulk is ultimately the one who's like, no, it's got to be me. It's mostly gamma radiation anyways. It's like I was made for this. And I have to admit, he couldn't exactly max time. He couldn't even do it. But I have to admit, Hulk doing it made perfect sense. Especially since that does kind of call back to his character arc, which effectively started in Avengers. You remember when Stark and Banner were both talking, and they had this terrible purpose. So you're saying there's a reason why the Hulk happened, and he sounded so bitter about it. And seeing this kind of conclusion of that arc, again, very truncated, but it was still nice to see that nod to the arc that Bruce has been on this whole time. Yeah, he's even in a cast after the funeral, still recovering from it. So he puts it on, and it's just destroying him. And of course, and I can't help but notice, I kind of referenced this earlier, it's the right hand. Now, I've actually said before, and I swear this has nothing to do with the film, really, but I like the idea of this is destruction, this is creation, right? My right hand, my left hand. And that goes back to an old thing about the hand of cursing and the hand of blessing and blah, 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 blah. But I always liked that idea. I like that kind of theming. You don't really have to call attention to it. You just have to do it in the background. And I noticed as soon as I saw the arm, I was like, that's the right hand. And it was kind of like, huh. Because that sort of makes sense, right? The left hand wiped out half of reality. The right hand brings it back. Now, we do have to be honest about something. Just bringing back half of life out of nowhere is going to be a mess. A huge mess. Obviously, it's a good thing. There was sunlight, the birds were chirping, yada, yada, yada. He gets a call from his wife. Clint gets a call from his wife. It was a powerful moment, and it was a great moment because it worked. But it's still going to be a nightmarish mess to clean up after. That's going to be some problems. Yeah, no kidding, Volcanto. What I find interesting, though, and this is never established in the film, but it is implied that the countersnap can actually only undo the things that the destruction snap did. It didn't bring back Loki. It didn't bring back Vision. It didn't bring back Natasha. It didn't bring back Gamora. And I feel like there's others there. But the point being, it could only undo what it already did. Now, I don't know if that's actually a hard rule, or if that's just something that's just kind of presented. I don't know. We do know that Hulk tried. He actually says that flat out. I tried to bring back Natasha, and I couldn't. That is something that he flat out says. Heimdall, he's another one. The Asgardians, yeah. So I find that interesting that they bothered to kind of write that in. Because that still allows there for be, Quicksilver, that still allows there for be the deaths that stick, while still going ahead and basically restoring those who were dusted. Probably max time. It is implied there's a degree of control over it. After all, it was implied that Thanos specifically allowed for, Stark to be spared, for example. Yeah, I was actually thinking something similar. When the ship shows up and just starts firebombing the base, I was actually like this, like, oh, God. Because none of them were... Well, okay, that's not true. Because here's the thing. I actually thought about this too. My first knee-jerk reaction was that people were going to die right then and there. My second reaction was, wait, no, they're fine. And I know that sounds stupid, and it's not just because of the fact that it's a film, and of course the heroes are fine, but it's actually because of the fact that if you paid attention, they bothered to establish that all of them shielded up and had armor going before the shots happened. If they hadn't armored up in preparation for the snap, they probably would have died. The only reason they had any kind of chance is because he was in the suit, he had the shield up, I forget what else. They showed a scene of everyone prepping for that, right? Nice little touch. Oh, you're right. I forgot to mention the Ancient One was like, oh, here you go. After Strange was mentioned. That was a nice touch. And they did start opening the bunker after the end of the snap. Although I don't remember if the bunker finished opening. I'd have to actually double check that. So then we go to our, our bottom moment of just, ugh, and they're just barely trying to struggle to survive and get out. And I have to admit, as soon as I saw that Ant-Man was the one going down to get them, I was like, yeah, he's going to go big. That's how he's going to get them out. He's going to go big, and that's going to get them out. That's a nice touch. But I also, so then, Thanos is like, go, get me the stones. And my first thought was, really? That's where you're going with this? And then he just sat down and was like, I'm going to just sit here and wait. And it honestly took me until the fight with Thanos to realize why he was doing that. Because, see, the thing is, while it makes a degree of sense for Warrior Thanos, for Warlord Thanos to be like this, he just wasn't as interesting of a character. He was, however, an absolutely terrifying combatant. So let's piece this up. It is the same mistake Thor made, you're absolutely right. But yeah, he basically goes full omnicidal maniac. He just becomes the guy who's like, yeah, I'm just going to kill everyone. You have taught me one thing. Wiping out half of life is going to leave people who remember what's lost, so I'm going to get rid of everything. No one will remember. It'll be made on blood, but no one will know it. All I will have is a grateful universe. Yeah, you should be grateful. He did effectively become just a straight comic book villain. I've actually heard several people relate him to Apocalypse in the film, specifically. I do like the fact that Thor... now, as much as I dislike what they did with Thanos character-wise, I love what they did with the fight. It was actually a brilliantly choreographed fight. The only downside with it is the fact that all three of them are attacking him at once, and then they start attacking him one at a time after that. I get why, but it was nice to see the actual coordination of the three of them going after him for a bit there. So, yeah, Thor's got the hammer and the axe. Stark has his best suit. And what's funny is, Thanos is really, really good. He is a hell of a berserker. Why is that, Max Time? He is a hell of a berserker. And just manages to actually hold off the three of them reasonably well. And in fact, if you notice, he basically gets more coarse in his fighting style. He starts off playing with them a little bit more. And instead he goes back to he just starts actually just brutally, viciously beating them down one at a time. It was actually quite efficient choreography in the way he was just in it, bam, down, over, next, go, just very quick and efficient. Almost kills Thor with his own axe. Like, there's a lot of very good movements there, just holy crap. And then there's a moment, and I've been actually deliberately avoiding talking about it, even though chat's mentioned it like 100 times or so. There's a moment where the hammer hovers up a second. And this is where I screwed up again. Because this is another of those moments where I reacted before everyone else did. I felt so bad. I kept apologizing to Third. He's like, it's fine, it's fine. The moment the hammer moved, I was like, yeah! Audience was still. And I'm like, Nope. The audience, however, absolutely lost it when it actually showed Cap with the hammer. Just completely lost it. I actually couldn't hear some of the upcoming fight because the audience was still going, yeah. And there was applause, there was cheering. Now, also, I did hear one bit, though. It's Thor. I knew it! That was a great callback. That was an amazing callback. I actually have had a theory. This is not a joke. I don't remember if I mentioned this in the rumination. I've had a theory for a while that when Cap started lifting the hammer, he realized it was coming and stopped pulling. Like he just gave up because he didn't want to emasculate him or be dick, right? Because that's not what he would do. He's not that mean of a guy. He probably just pulled and was like, oh, okay, and then put it back down. Now, I don't know if that's true, but I've had that theory for a long time, ever since Ultron came out. So, Thor being like, I knew it, just kind of clicked with me, because if you pay attention to that scene, and again, I ruminated on this recently, so it's fresh in my mind, Thor's face, he's just, and then Cap stirs it, and Thor goes, just all of the smile immediately fades, like, and there's this actual look of worry, like, oh god. Oh crap, what do I do? So, Thor being excited, that was great. That was great. And that brings us to the fact that Cap was better with the hammer than Thor was. Because he was. He was brilliant with that thing. He absolutely rocked Thanos with that. And it was really awesome. I personally think that that's mostly a bit of fan service. The same way that Cap was able to hold off Thanos for a second or two back in Infinity War, when honestly he probably should have just been an afterthought. But I'm okay with it because Cap does have the skill, he does have the experience and the cone for it, and he's seen Thor fight a lot, right? He even does several of Thor's moves, if you were paying attention, including the spinning uppercut thing, right? Now, that was great. That whole thing was great. But then basically they lose. Thanos still actually defeated them. And that brings to my mind what is, in my opinion, the absolute best part of the entire film, and I mean that sincerely. This is the third and final time I lost control of myself during this film. So, Thanos just starts beating down on the shield, actually breaking the shield, actually breaking the vibranium, which, honestly, I'm with that. It demonstrates what we're dealing with here. Smash, 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 throws it down, and Cap is gone. Yeah, what the hell was his weapon made of? I mean, it does make a degree of sense. Vibranium was a meteorite, right? I mean, there's got to be something else, either equivalent or actually could be vibranium, out in the rest of the galaxy, right? This is Thanos. He's had a long time to do this. So, also, it then adds more power to when Wanda manages to damage the sword, by the way. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So, beats down the shield. Cap is there, and there's this brilliant long shot of Cap right here, Thanos, and an army. And then Thanos goes full villain. I'm going to enjoy killing all of you. I'm going to enjoy destroying your planet. Screw you. You know, blah, 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 blah. And Cap goes up and just does what Cap does, which isn't even the right thing, really. I should say it's not the correct thing. Because there's a difference between the correct thing and the right thing. And Captain America consistently, in every movie he's been in, has been about doing the right thing, regardless of if it's correct or not. So he just gets up and says no. Now, I know a lot of people think that those drones were automated back in the Best of Both Worlds Part 2. But if we assume for a moment that they weren't, it's the exact same concept. Yes, the Borg are coming. That doesn't mean we're just going to give up, right? And so they... And then, on your left... And what I like about that is it actually makes a weird amount of sense if you step back and think about it. There's a few references that they mentioned to how, like, the moment Strange came back, he was like, we gotta get going. We gotta get everyone together. We gotta get everyone together. We got a lot of people to get... Like, they don't actually show that, of course. But they needed to get every single group of everyone that's been in the entire film series in the last 10 years... 11 years of cinematic history, all of them that were still alive. They bring in everyone, every army, every individual, just pull them all out. And there's just this huge, oh God, and I'm just sitting there like, oh my God. And then, once they are all there, Cap says, Avengers, assemble. And that's when I lost it, right there. I just completely lost it. I actually shouted out, yeah! And I was so embarrassed for doing that. Oh my god. Oh, that was so good. That's my favorite film. That's my favorite scene in the film right there. Because even though it makes a degree of thematic, logical continuity sense, but also because it is the thematic conclusion of 20 films. It is saying, no, really, all of us versus you. We are actually united on this one. Piss off. And then the battle starts. Now, I'm going to get geeky for just a second here. I agree, Syldear. Like I said, it doesn't fit perfectly. There are still issues with it. You want more? The cinematography during the battle was actually simultaneously excellent and kind of irritating. Because every now and again, the excellence was phenomenal. Right at the beginning, there's a fake long shot. You can tell it's fake, but it's still very well done. It's basically 5 or 6 separate battles as the camera's kind of moving between them, creating the illusion of this being one cohesive shot. Now, even though it's a fake long shot, that's still a lot harder to pull off than a straight-up edit chop shot, which is what most battle scenes and what the rest of the battle actually does. But it was still excellent. And there was a lot of great showcasing of what they could do as a team, and it was basically just fan service. It was just, yes, here, go. Excellent cinematography for the most part. And, of course, Rescue. Am I the only one who really liked the way Rescue looked? Yeah, Hawkeye. Oh God, just Rescue was there. She never wears anything. I look. She's the Rescue and him doing the back-to-back fighting. Yes, Anthony. I also love her suit is blue and his is red. Just nice little touch there. I liked, oh God, I don't even know where to start. I liked Spider-Man turning on instant kill mode. And it basically, the suit starts killing enemies and he's just trying to keep up with it. There was just, oh God, I don't even know where to start. I would have to go through scene by scene and just, whenever we inevitably do a rumination on this film in like 2 years or whatever, I'm going to have to sit down and be like, okay, then this happens, and then this happens, and then this happens. Yeah, Spidey saving Stark. Oh God. So, I'm just going to summarize. A lot of awesome stuff happens. Although I liked how Ant-Man managed to crush, I can't think of his name, the big guy from Infinity War. Like the big super guy who was really, really tough, who they only defeated with the portal thing. Ant-Man just conk! Cole Obsidian, that's him. That was just, oh, that was awesome. And the Pegasus, and I love how Parker is just like, oh, yeah, I'm on a flying horse now, okay. Whatever. Sure. See you around, Seraphim. Maltania, have a good one. So yeah, it was just a bunch of awesome fan service. The women get together to allow Captain Marvel to get this thing there. Thanos is still actually fighting it out with those who are actually reaching him. But I'm just going to kind of fast forward a little bit because there's 3 bits I want to talk about that battle. It's actually reasonably long, but we're gonna skip forward a little bit. So first, I want to talk about Wanda. Now, the Wanda thing. Oh, I know, more cowbell. The Wanda thing I liked, but mostly because they've never done that properly before. Well, that's not true. They did that in Infinity War. See, the thing is, Wanda's really strong. Even in the MCU. In the comics, she is extremely high tier, reality-altering level powerful. But even in the MCU, which is overall more low tier than the comics, she is definitely one of the higher tier mages. She is way high tier, and she's never, well, I shouldn't say never, she is almost never really portrayed at the level of power that she can actually do. The end of Infinity War kind of showcased what she could do, because she managed to hold off Thanos with all the gloves, while simultaneously destroying one of the stones. That's pretty impressive. I agree. I actually agree completely. Captain Marvel, Vision, and Wanda are probably all at roughly the exact same tier of power because of the source of their powers. Exactly. She is raw DPS. And so she goes after Thanos. I don't even know who you are. Oh, you will. And, oh, she just... And then she basically beats Thanos by herself. Yeah, that makes sense to me. The problem is Thanos, for all of his multiple failures, Thanos does... He's the Iron Man. He isn't just fighting her one-on-one. He's fighting her with an army at his back. So he goes full code red and starts orbital bombardment of the entire area. Even his own guy is like, "Sir, are you sure?" And Thanos is like, "Yes, do this now." And then his ships are... I mean, that thing's not quite a Star Destroyer, but still, they basically just start unloading on the area. And, yeah, that was pretty damn impressive. Because one of the interesting things about her is she doesn't really have a lot of defense. I mean, if you shot with a gun, if you managed to get her unprotected or unawares and just shot her in the head, that would be the end of the Scarlet Witch, right? She's not like Thor where she has the additional durability to go with her powers. Yeah, exactly. She has a full glass cannon. So you notice she has to immediately redirect her power to trying to survive the bombardment, which also basically everyone does. Everyone else immediately just kind of stops fighting and start, okay, get the warp bubbles up, or not the warp bubbles, the magic shields, and just everyone just, oh my god. Yeah, they had to completely shift everything. Then the ship shifts its fire up. Now, I'll go ahead and admit this. I didn't realize that was her at first. In fact, I didn't even realize that was her at second or third. The ship started firing up, and my first thought was, oh god, they're going to start targeting civilians. They're going to pull you're going to have to go save them or save me kind of a thing. My second thought was it was some other ships that hadn't already shown up. Which, yeah, okay. My third thought was, are they doing something with the clouds? Like a thunderstorm thing? Because they're literally shooting into this massive storm front. And then my fourth thought was, oh. And then Captain Marvel does exactly what she is good at. Now, I know a lot of people don't like this, and I understand completely. I really do. But as I said earlier, I think this is exactly what her specialty is. She's the heavy. She just smashed through the ship. That's what she's good at, right there. Brute force slamming into an obstacle until it's not in the way anymore. She is in many ways a stronger version of the Hulk, Yeah, she goes down to poor Parker. Now, that's the first thing I wanted to talk about. Believe it or not, that's all still just the first thing about the finale I wanted to talk about. I'd say yes, Chandra. I'd say yes. I need to... whatever. Sorry. I need to message to Koida later and apologize to him, because it's been bugging me. So, second thing I want to talk about is something the film does that I like it when fiction does this. It's called the definition of victory. I've talked about this many times, especially on my Star Trek stuff. The definition of victory is when a fictional work redefines what winning means, and in so doing, redefines what the goals are. If the definition of victory is just beating the enemy, then a lot of times you're like, well, what's the point? Like, okay, we beat the enemy, we win, the end. Ooh. Like one by one hazardous? Okay, I'll go ahead and admit I'm trying not to talk about the all-woman scene because it's 2019. I really don't. I don't want to talk about it. But in the interest of, in a blank check, let's just make a little square here. Let's just pull this off to the side. It was a really cool scene that I feel probably could have been done better. Like, at first I didn't even realize it was all the women until I was like, oh, it's all the women. Okay. I mean, they were just as awesome as anyone else, right? In fact, in many ways, they were more awesome. So I'm with it. It's just okay. So that's really all I have to say there. I don't have a big thing to say here. I really don't. It was cool. Now, that being stated, I do have to admit that my audience absolutely erupted into applause during that scene. So, yeah, okay, I'm with it. Because as Malachor just says, this is fan service, the movie. It really is. One of Third's biggest complaints about this film is something that doesn't bother me, but I agree with completely. There's no real stakes. This is not a big contest to be overcome. This is a celebration of what we've already done. Now, that's why it doesn't bother me, because it's a celebration of what's already happened. It really was fan service, the movie. And I kind of walked in expecting that, and that's exactly what I got out of it. But, okay, you know? So, anyway, so the second thing, the definition of victory. And as someone already in chat already pointed it out, sorry, I swear I'm not ignoring you guys. The definition of victory was getting those stones back where they need to be, right? That's the definition of victory for the good guys. The definition of victory for Thanos is get the glove. And you'll notice that after the encounter with Wanda, he completely stops trying to be fancy or anything. He just is all of a sudden brutal berserker, get to that thing. And he just starts beelining it. He stops playing around, basically. He has actually had a taste of, yeah, okay, this is actually a problem. Let's deal with this. And at that point, and I mentioned the stakes thing on purpose, because it was the only scene in the entire film where I felt there were real stakes. Because Thanos was at all times seconds from victory. All he had to do was, done. That's all he had to do. And so there's this great scene of them basically trying to get this stone to the frickin' van to just get it out of here, which honestly probably wouldn't have worked anyways. Until finally they're like, okay, what the hell are we going to do about this? I find myself curious if Danvers could have survived using the stone herself. I'm not actually sure. She certainly has durability, but most of that durability is actually energy projection, not herself. So it's entirely possible she, like many other people, would have died if she had actually used it. I mean, considering what that thing did to Hulk and Thanos, the only two people to survive using the stones, that's impressive. But anyway, so this then brings me to actually a moment, and I already mentioned it, so please forgive me for the repetition, where it's Captain Marvel versus Thanos. And what I like about it is two things. Number one, the fact that she is brute force capable of taking him down, which makes sense to me. When it's a brute force fight, she's got that. And that makes sense to me, and I'm okay with that completely. The headbutt really just shows that perfectly, like, bonk! The second thing I like about it, Thanos outsmarts her. Because she really is a brute. She's a blunt instrument. She was that way in her own movie, too. Everything she does is just to whatever's in her path. And I'm not complaining. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's part of her character. Thanos actually outsmarts her, uses a stone, counteracts her, tries to get the thing, almost gets it. I love that little conflict there, because all of that made perfect sense and it was exactly how I think it should have been. And then he goes for the snap. He's barely interrupted in time. He makes his one and only mistake where he finally speechifies, and then nothing happens. Of course it doesn't. Because Stark... Right? Strange is over here. And he's looking right at Stark. And Stark's looking at him. And he just goes... And there's... Credit to Benedict Cumberbatch, who doesn't actually have much of a role in this film. He's just... You can see his expression, like, this is it! This is it, right here! He doesn't have to say anything. This is the one chance! And Stark's like... And what I love best about that is, of course, Stark doesn't hesitate. I mean, he does, to make his line. But he grabs the thing. I am inevitable. Yeah, and I don't like how long they dragged it, if I'm being completely honest, but I am Iron Man. I meant he grabs the stones. Sorry, I misspoke. Because of course he would have built a way for him to use the stones as suit. Of course he would have. And what I love it is, yeah, he made sure Thanos went last. Because you can decide that. But what he did there, and it's so perfect because he basically did it. Everything he's been fighting against ever since Avengers 1 has been removed from the board completely in a way that ensures they will never come back. He did that in a way that truly makes it so that this is an actual long-term, arguably permanent victory. He did it. He actually did it. You can rest. Oh, God, you can rest now, Tony. Because he never could. For however many years, he never could. Because he knew. And Thanos dies perfectly. In fact, I actually can only think of one other villain like that who has died in the same manner. That would be Kefka. He dies in silence. There's no, I can't be defeated. No, Thanos is gone. Thanos is gone. And he dies in despair. Silence. Silence is the sound of despair. Because when you truly despair, you're not upset about it anymore. You're not angry about it anymore. When you are truly in the realm of despair, you have given up so totally and utterly. And Thanos had. He knew in that moment that he had permanently, really, lost. And he died in silence. He went to the Soulstone realm in silence. That's it. The end. Great death. And immediately followed by another great death. Parker, Rhodey, Potts. And yeah, Pepper's the one who tells him you can go. And his light goes out and... Oh, God, our audience is dying. Like you could hear people stifling, sobbing. My own sister was barely holding it together. I was crying my head off. I'm not going to try and act all tough here. I was losing it. I'm actually glad you're... To quite really quick, I just want to apologize in public. I'm really sorry. I lost my temper at you earlier. I apologize. I didn't mean it. I really didn't. You're awesome. And I do like you being on my show and being a good way to check me, and I apologize, sir. Please forgive me for that. Sorry, I've been holding that in ever since I lost my temper earlier, and I felt really bad about it. Funnily enough, I was actually going to comment on something as well, because, funnily enough, Stan Lee used to be a dick. I know that's horrible to say that, to speak ill of the man since he's dead, but he really did used to be kind of a jerk, and kind of a crook in his own way, too. However, I will say, I think he managed to turn that around. That's my opinion. I think Stan Lee did manage to turn that around in the final years of his life, in the final decade or so of his life. And I do give him credit for that. It's one of the reasons why I do champion the man, is because I do personally think he managed to turn it around. I'm not sure if that's 100% true. I'm really not. But I do think that he managed to turn it around. I do think he managed to be a decent person in his final years. I do think he basically just turned into the soul of Marvel in many ways. Just my opinion on that. Again, I don't know. Yeah, he stole a lot of stuff from Jack Kirby. Let's not get into that. So, okay, let's get back to Stark there for a second. I agree, by the way, Dakota. I do agree with you, absolutely, on that point. It's one of the reasons why it irritates me when, like, the Hulk fights Wolverine, to use a direct example of something that's happened. Guess who won that one? Anyways, so enough about Stan Lee. Stark. Yeah, we all knew Stark was dying. Like, really, as I said, there was no real big spoiler. You remember my analysis? I wouldn't blame you if you don't, or if you didn't see it, but I did an analysis on the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer. And I spent like 5 minutes discussing, okay, you see this, and this, and this, and this, and this. This is why Stark dies. There was a lot of visual and audio hinting that Stark died in Endgame, and that Parker is still recovering from that. which is another reason why that trailer going live early, when it wasn't supposed to go live, is so damned aggravating. What? Just, I agree with that, Hazardous. No, yeah, I talked about this in a previous Loreweek. I don't blame you for not being there. Basically, we don't know all the specifics, but we do know that Sony released the Spider-Man Homecoming trailer early. Based on evidence, I theorized that it was supposed to be released, like, this week, basically. Like, after Endgame had gone live. I'm not actually sure if that's true, but we do know, the one thing we know with total certainty is that it was released early. It wasn't supposed to go live when it did, which was like a month ago or whatever at this point. I'm sorry, I don't understand, Rax. I'm probably losing my brain here. Thor not dying was very surprising. Oh yeah, I guess we should discuss the epilogue, because that's the final part of the film. Let me go ahead and say something that's partially controversial and partially not. And also I'm going to start ordering food because it's already getting there and my headache's already getting worse. I'm a better person now. The epilogue. So, I know we're actually not there yet, but there's a bit where they talk about how Natasha's dead. And someone says, did she have any family? And someone angrily replies, yeah, us. I know that's not actually in the epilogue. Oh, gotcha. I don't know, Rax. I'll have to relook at it. But I do think we know for total certainty that they are actually lying about trailers nowadays. You guys noticed that several scenes were just in the trailer for Endgame were not even in the film at all. They were even open about that. Anyways, so losing my train of thought. The epilogue. So they have the funeral. They have this scene where they play the hologram. Yeah, we're doing this time travel thing tomorrow, and it'll probably all work out, and it'll be cool. Everything will be fine. I was still in the midst of basically losing it by that point. I'm going to go... Oh, hang on. I'm actually losing it for a second. Give me a second. One of the things that I keep meaning to do, and I think I'm actually going to finally commit to doing this, is I keep meaning to record a video of myself saying goodbye to people. To my family. If I get into an accident, or if my health goes south, or if a meteor hits me, or whatever, right? Because this is 2019, and I have a camera and a microphone. I have the unique ability to record something of me actually talking in case I was to die, in case something happens to me. And that's what I was thinking about in that scene, was because Stark had that ability. He had the ability to record a friggin' hologram of himself, just in case. And I'm reminded of something. Hang on a second. God, which was it? There's a film or a game or something recently. I don't remember which one it was. Where someone says, they record a goodbye message before every mission they do. And then they delete it, because, it's fine. But then the next mission comes around and they record another one. I can't remember what that's from. It's something I've covered recently, like this year. But yeah, I actually know people in the military, I guess I should use past tense here, who did exactly that. Because, of course, Stark would do something like that, right? And, of course, he could say, I love you 3000. Oh, my God, I am really losing it here. Yeah. God. And then the funeral. Proof that Iron Man has a heart. Or no, proof that Tony Stark has a heart. Sorry. You remember that? From the first film? From Iron Man 1? And what I like most about that is it was a slow pan over basically each of the groups. Just, here's the first group, and here's the second group, and here's the third group, and the fourth group, and the fifth group, and the sixth group. And I remember thinking, because there was no dialogue for that section, and I remember thinking, a lot of these people, most of these people are alive because of this man. I remember thinking that. And I love the fact that so many people came together for his funeral. Ah, right. Thank you, Black Bow. And of course, the kid. I actually remember, I think it was Sis, someone was audibly like, "Who's that?" But yeah, that was the kid from Iron Man 3. Yeah, they were all there, and just paying their respects. Fury in the very back, basically his only scene in the entire film. Yeah, same actor too. It's the only reason I recognized him. He's grown up a bit, obviously. It's been a few years. But yeah, they were all there, and there's a nice little final scene between the two people who personally lost someone. That would be Clint and Wanda, who both kind of accept that, yeah, that, Vision is gone, and excuse me, and Natasha is gone, and I liked that. That was just a little denouement, because it wasn't it'll be okay. It was more like, yeah, it sucks. I've said it before and I'll say it again. No matter what else you tack onto it, good or bad, at the end of the day, death sucks. I've said that about real life many, many times. I would believe that, Lycon, just like his dad did for him. And I agree in many ways that Robert Downey Jr. probably owes his life to the MCU. I mean, granted, he's also super rich now too, so let's not ignore that. But he was in a pretty bad way until he got back into the MCU. I'm going to get you all the cheeseburgers you want. I'm sorry. I don't actually have much to add to this, because a lot of it is right there on display, so to speak. It's right there on the nose. The one thing I do want to add really quick, though, is that I really liked how... I mean, because I already talked about the Captain America thing. I don't have anything about that. And obviously there's the Stark thing. Then there's the Thor thing. Let's move past emotional destitution here for just a second. Let's talk about the Thor thing. Because Thor hands over the reins to Valkyrie. Now, I'm not sure 100% what I think of that. We do kind of... I would have liked it if Valkyrie had a little bit more earlier, instead of... Thor is fat. Like, if you had taken the same chunk of time for the Thor is fat and the Valkyrie, cameo, I wish it had been a little more, either even or more leaning towards her, kind of establishing how she has, started actually running Asgard and being the leader for them while he's off drunkening. I think that would have worked a little bit better. But, that being stated... I do actually kind of agree. I do think Valkyrie is going to be a better fit than Thor, because Thor has never really been that great of a, let's call it a ruler. Possibly even a leader. Thor has several talents, but I don't think either of those are they. Oh yeah, I agree absolutely, Darkstar, with that one. Now... I guess that's true, Savicom and Volcanto. I still think they need to do a little bit more with it. Partially because I wanted to see more of her. Partially because I think we saw too much of him. I really thought the Thor is pathetic scene just went on a little bit too long. It felt like a weirdly long section. But anyways. I'm with the Fortnite reference. Listen, I'm going to go over there. And I'm going to fight to tear off your arms. And, yeah, anyways. Now, we have to talk about something, because there's a Guardians of the Galaxy 3 coming out. So, is Thor going to be in that? Real question. Now, I hope so, too. I really do. But... yeah, the Asgardians of the Galaxy, which is a real thing, by the way. It's an actual comic. Food. I'm actually quite curious where they're going to go with that one. Because they could do a lot with that. And they might not do anything with that. I don't know. I don't know where they're going with it. Who's in charge? It could also be he's like there in the film. He's just not part of the team. Keep in mind, Gamora, as you guys indicated, was also not a part of the team. So, right? I don't know. I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy 3 is a hard film to speculate on, mostly because of the behind-the-scenes thing. I imagine Adam Warlock is where they're going with it. They already established that back in 2. So, I don't know. The signed credits. Yeah, I noticed that. In fact, I was thinking of Star Trek 6 as well. They did the signed credits for the Big Six, for the main Avengers, which was a nice touch. And showcasing scenes of them from across the movies, which was also a nice touch. Again, it brings to mind the exact same feeling that Star Trek 6 did, because Star Trek 6 was a celebration and conclusion of the Star Trek film franchise and of the original series. Just like this film is a celebration and conclusion of the MCU. Now, obviously, the MCU is still going, but it's going to be something new. Whatever happens after this is going to be Battle for Azeroth. This was Legion, right? Don't read too much into that. You get my point. That's also why, and of course, to continue that thought, that's also exactly why I like the fact that there was no end credit sequence. Because there didn't need to be. The end credits have always been one of two things. Either a joke or a teaser for what's next. A lead-in into the next thing, right? They've been doing that all the way since Iron Man 1 and Hulk. This is the bookend. I know Feige insists that Homecoming is actually the end of season 3. But yeah, no, this is the end right here. There's no actual need for an end credit sequence. Now, of course, the anvil sound, if I'm not mistaken, and I could be, please forgive me, if I'm not mistaken, that is the exact sound from the first film. And by the first film, I mean Iron Man 1. Of him, making the original Iron Man prototype. Again, I could be wrong about that. So let's do this, and this, and this. You wanted a thank you for Stan Lee? Yeah, I would have been with that. That wouldn't be an end credit sequence, though. That would have just been a thank you to Stan Lee. Was I satisfied with the movie? Yes. Firmly. This film is the kind of thing... I kept geeking out about it because... Oh, sorry, Far From Home. I'm sorry. Spider-Man 2, whatever. I kept geeking out about it because this has never happened before. This is an actual, truly unique circumstance in film history. There has never been 20 films of a more or less cohesive narrative. Basically from... There's like the lead up to Avengers, and then there's the Avengers to this. It's effectively 2 arcs. Bam, bam. And we've never had this happen. This is literally history in the making. And as a film geek, I was just geeking out about it constantly. Like, oh my god. This is an achievement. This is an achievement. And I am legitimately satisfied. Legacy of the Void. Similar feeling. Legion. Similar feeling. Back to the Future 3. I mean, I don't actually have another good example of this. There's got to be other things that have had that kind of a long-term conclusion. But, Bob and George. Similar feeling. There you go. If the MCU ended right here now, would I be okay with that? Honestly, yes. I really would. Now, obviously, it's not going to. This is a money train right here. But, and obviously, I'm still going to be giving the future films a shot. But my mentality, well, I've already told you guys. See you around, Dante. The Iconian War. There's a good one. My mentality right now is the MCU has concluded. Whatever's after this is going to be something new. And I'm going to judge it based on that, basically. This is something new. And if I'm not mistaken, hang on, we already know everything that is currently planned for Phase 4 that they're already working on. Give me a second. I was looking this up last night, too. So we've got the Black Widow movie, which they're filming this week. We've got the Eternals, which we know very little about. Doctor Strange 2, which we know even less about. Black Panther 2. Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3, and then Shang-Chi, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong. Please forgive me for that. Which, for those of you not aware, is this whole martial arts thing based on Shang-Chi, which I'm probably pronouncing wrong. Actually, I kind of like the idea of a more down-to-earth film like that, so I'm with that. Really, I'm actually pretty much with that. And yeah, I know Eternals is on the list. Let's see. Is that it? I think that's actually all we know right now for certainty. And we do know that, according to Feige, at the very least, technically, Far From Home is the actual end of the MCU Phase 3. I don't see how I can personally picture it that way. We'll see whenever that comes out. I don't even remember when that film comes out, but we'll see when it gets there. Hang on, where's Phase 3? And this is coming out July. Okay, so... yeah, about 2 months. That's the week I move, actually. How do I feel about the time travel? I didn't like it. To summarize, I actually talked about it quite a bit at the beginning of this stream. But to summarize, I didn't like it. Shrug. Let's do this. Sorry, I'm finishing ordering food. Now, I saw someone else say that earlier, Blue Wolf Folks. I don't know if that was you. It's easier for me to read the text than the names. I don't know why. But you're right. It's probably going to be basically an epilogue. And I actually imagine... I take that back. I don't think that Far From Home is going to be an epilogue. I don't. I think it's going to be a bridge. I think it's going to be... Okay, we did it. Now what? We had the big victory, we had the big loss. Now what, right? And it's going to help establish what's going forward into Phase 4. I almost guarantee we're going to have some kind of either in the film or in end credit sequence thing, which is going to help establish whatever's coming next. I almost guarantee that. Who do I think the next big bad is going to be? That's an interesting question. I'm going to cheat and say no one. Hear me out. How old is Kevin Feige? I don't think... You see where I'm going with this? I don't think he's going to try and do another significant long-term arc like he did with Thanos. I think he's going to try and concentrate on more small-term arcs going forward because he's getting on in the years. Just my thoughts on that. I don't know if that's what I would do, but I would... no, I take that back. I know exactly what I would do. I would probably go ahead and work... basically, exactly what Corty just say. Make each phase have one arc villain that, ties in either thematically or literally into the phase. And then it concludes with, such and such a film where they take on the villain, and then they move on, right? That's my thoughts. As opposed to Thanos, which was a 3-phase villain. Now that makes sense, of course, because it was Thanos. But still. Is there an heir to Feige? I don't know. I've actually tried looking into that and I haven't found any significant information. We do know that several interviews have said that there's no plans to bake in the X-Men or any of the other Fox titles into Phase 4. Phase 5, on the other hand, there's been several hints that they're going to try to do something, and they've already been thinking about what to do in Phase 5 with regards to X-Men and whatever they're going with that. So we're probably going to get that stuff baked in about 5 years, actually, because Phase 4 is supposed to be ending in 2024, roughly. We'll see. We'll see. I believe Deadpool's going to be pushed in there too, yeah. For obvious reasons. Did I finish? I'm losing my train of thought here so much. Let's see. So we got a sandwich. And... Should I get fries, guys? Yeah, Phase 4 was supposed to have the Inhumans. I say was because last I checked, we haven't had information on that in forever. I'm actually glad that both the X-Men and Deadpool are not in Endgame. And I can explain... I probably don't even have to explain this. It would have been shoving them in. It wouldn't have fit. They're not part of the MCU. By which I mean, they're not part of what they're calling the Infinity Saga. They're not. Now, You want him in the future? Yeah, I'm down with that. But it would have felt awkward and weird to me if they were just like, clunk, there we go, and there they are. Probably doesn't help that Phoenix is coming out in like a week or something, right? Isn't it? Dark Phoenix? Anyone seeing that? No judgment. I'm just curious. Hello, Final Cloud. What's up? You don't, Savacom? We can't be friends anymore. I guess we're not friends right now. Whatever. Point being, I'll order fries just because you said so. I currently have no plans to see it. If I end up seeing it, I might actually end up seeing it alone, because no one I know wants to see it. So, that actually reminds me of something. Hang on. I need to pull up Straw Poll. Let's see if Straw Poll actually works now, because it wasn't working the other day. Of course, Chocolate Rob. Unless you don't think we are. What's the name of it? Is it Dark Phoenix? God, I don't even remember. Dark Phoenix. I'm absolutely seeing Godzilla. I'm actually legitimately hyped, for Godzilla. Yeah, it's Dark Phoenix. I was right. Okay. Okay, let's see. I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a poll. Hopefully it's working. I want honest answers on this one. Because this is a film I'm not going to see on my own. But if you guys want me to see it for the show, I absolutely will do that. I have no problems doing that. Make sense? So I need you to tell me if I'm going to see Dark Phoenix, okay? And I got a lot of you guys here, and a lot of you are interested in these kind of films, so please do me a favor. You can vote anonymously if you've never used straw poll. Even if you're a lurker, please do me a favor. Go over there and post that poll, please. I'm watching it right now. It looks like it's actually working, so that's good. Oh, yeah, let me toss up the Voot thing. I'll leave it up all day. Probably longer than all day here. Voot. The vote is extremely split, so don't think it's a throwaway thing. I know some people think, oh, there's no reason to vote because it's super split, or because it's all one-sided. So, I hope Lurker shows back up again someday, Burnus. I've missed him. I miss Eingrod, too, but... Deutsch. And the Gawa twins. Anyways, as all things should be, Rax. Thank you, Platty. Headache is slowly getting worse. Of course, Darkstar. I haven't seen you... Well, I hadn't, I should suppose. I've seen you forever. I mean, it's the nature of the show. People bow in and bow out. That's how it works. I am inevitable. Oh, sorry. What happened with Lurker? He just bowed out for a bit, that's all. He decided to go and do his own thing, and he left, that's all. Like, there was no drama. That is a hell of a split vote. Keep voting. I'm going to go ahead and chop off the local recording. So, for those of you watching on YouTube... Ah, whoop, screwed up. Hang on.